Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Please come through and take a seat. Plenty of seats down the front row. This is not like the comedy festival. I'm not going to heckle you or pick on you if you're up here. But good afternoon and welcome. Welcome to the key findings presentation of the 2023 Contact Centre Best Practice Report, possibly the last one not written by ChatGPT, but we'll wait and see how we go. I'd like to start today by acknowledging that we meet on the traditional lands of the Wurundjeri Woi Wurrung and the Bunurong Bun Wurrung people of East Kulin, and we pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging, and a special welcome to any First Nations people who are with us today. My name is James Whitcomb. I'm the Director at Smart Recruitment. At Smart Recruitment, I've been recruiting for contact centres since 2005. Smart as a business turned 18 years old yesterday, so we've come of age finally. And for the purpose of today, though, I'm the author of the Best Practice Report, which has been a real passion project of mine for the last 5 years, because so many of our call centre clients rely on us for insights and for data, and we couldn't find any data that wasn't heavily Americanised. We couldn't find data that wasn't specific just to the unique nature and culture of Australian contact centres. So in 2019 we produced the first report, and so on and so forth over the last couple of years. And many of you have probably attended our event last year, and today we release edition 4. We couldn't do it without your support. So if you or your contact centre contributed to the report, please pop your hand up in the air. Pop your hand up, hold it really high. Stephanie, take a photo. And we're just geo-tagging those who didn't have their hand up to make sure that next year you help us. But we couldn't do it without your support, so thank you very much for completing the surveys. We had over 500 questions answered across these different categories. And one thing that we think is really important with the report is hearing the voice of different people. So our most important survey is the Senior Leader Survey, but over the years we've added more and more categories. And today, for the first time, we're going to hear from the voice of knowledge managers and also the voice of trainers and those in learning and development. And we've added new chapters to the report as well. But we can't show you everything today. This is a key findings presentation, so we're not even going to be able to go through all of the chapters. There are just some things that we don't have time for. We couldn't produce this report without significant financial contribution, and that has come through our partners. We've also lent on our partners for their expertise in terms of writing the questions, in terms of interpreting the results, in terms of encouraging people to participate. So you're going to hear from a wide range of different speakers today. They're all going to get up and talk about their topic for 14 or 15 minutes. So the good thing is, if any of them are boring, you've only got to sit through one person and then someone else will get up really soon. Really important to us in this report is to make sure that we've got a really accurate indication of the industry. So we don't want to be too heavily skewed towards an industry group that's misrepresented. As we all know, pretty much every industry has a contact centre, and so we try really hard to make sure that we're getting a really good mix. 52% of the responses do come from contact centres working across utilities, banking, finance and insurance, but that's probably accurate of the market as a whole. And 90% of the respondents have used an in-sourced contact centre, 10% are purely outsourced, but amongst that 90%, 28% use both. In total, when we look at the volume of interactions the respondents to the survey handled, it's over 98 million calls, 38 million synchronous or live chat messages, and 55 million async messages. So it's a very, very busy industry. It's a huge amount of interactions that our agents are dealing with. Again, because we want this to be a national report, we survey people all around Australia. Victoria, we get the strongest response from, probably because that's where our home has been. So 92 contact centres identified they had a centre in Victoria, and 20 from regional Victoria. So probably mostly for any audience that we present to this month, the results are extremely relevant to those of you in the room today. So what we're going to do today, we're going to break it into two parts. So the first part, which is the longer part of the presentation, we're going to be looking at these categories primarily through the lens of the senior leader survey. So most of the results throughout the first half are coming from the voice of the senior leader. And then after afternoon tea, we're going to start to look at the responses from individual groups like agents, team leaders, workforce planners, knowledge managers, and so on. And then at 5 o'clock sharp, we'll finish with some drinks and networking, and we'll give out the reports. We're going to be taking questions for each speaker, so please grab out your phone and scan the QR code, or head to slido.com and pop in number 385. Every speaker will have about 15 minutes to present, and then I'll jump up at the end. Sometimes they might get a bit carried away and not have any time for questions. That's okay. But if they do, I will be picking out some of the questions. So feel free to put some through. There's a prize, a $200 voucher for the best question at the end of the day. So if for no other reason than financial gain, it'd be great to pop a question in there. The first category, or the first topic we're going to look at today is digital transformation. And I've asked Ian from Verent to present this category first because every single contact centre is going through digital transformation. Some will be doing it in a best practice way. They'll be adopting new technologies that help both their customers and their staff. Some will be lagging behind. But it touches on so many other aspects of the report and so many of the other things that we're going to be talking about today. So really, to set the scene for everything that we're going to be hearing today, ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together to welcome Ian from Verent. Long walk.
Yeah, thanks. So, thank you, James. So, my name's Ian Harrison. I realise that picture up there looks like a lot younger version of me, which is sort of good. So, we're here to talk about digital transformation, and it's a big topic. So, many of you will have a different understanding of what digital transformation is all about. Currently, in the current climate, you probably feel like digital transformation is all that we hear about when it comes to AI and bots and so on. But what I want to do is just chat about some of the high-level themes of digital transformation, some of the results that we've assessed from digital transformation from the survey. So for those of you who didn't participate in this part of the survey, what we basically said is, or we asked a whole lot of questions of some of the senior managers around the country in terms of what technologies they were using to address certain digital transformations, how well they thought they were using those technologies and what their capability was. And then we asked them to actually define which technologies that they thought would address the certain challenges they had. So what you're going to see is a whole lot of results in that space. But firstly, what I wanted to do is just talk a little bit about why. So why do we want to focus on these technologies? And let's set the scene a bit. So if we think about our customers, what we're really wanting the customers to do is to feel really understood, to feel like they're treated with white glove service. Nowadays, it's not good enough for every customer to feel like they're treated like a big mass of people. They want to feel like they're special. They want to feel like the organisation knows who they are and they get treated in a seamless way. And we want them particularly to feel like every interaction with the organisation they're dealing with is a positive one that drives their satisfaction and keeps them loyal to the organisation. The flip side of that, of course, is the employee. So we all know that our employees are starting to feel like they need more and more technology. They want to feel like they've got things at their fingertips that are going to allow them to work from anywhere, to be able to perform at their best, and make them feel like the organisation they're working with is one that's really looking after them and they're going to feel loved. Particularly thinking about recruitment, we all know nowadays it's easy for employees to shift themselves from one place to another. It's pretty easy to take a job in another state for another organisation and stay in the same chair you were in last week. So we want the employees to feel like they're being supported effectively. So we want to do this for three key reasons. So the first one really is, how do we give the customers this feeling like they're being cared for in a unique and special way? So we want them to feel they have a personalised approach to their support. We want them to feel like it's seamless in particular, but also we want self-service to be able to be provided very quickly via an application. We want the customers to feel like they only authenticate once and then the organisation knows who they are in all their dealings. And we want them to feel like everything's nice and automated and flows through. From an employee perspective, in many ways it's AI support for the employees, but also it's about the pathway for the employees in their career. They want to be able to feel like they can work well from wherever they are and that they're given the support they need and the learning and the development as they go through their career with the organisation. So let's get on to some of the results. It was interesting, all of these came out as very high or high in the survey results. So analytics and insights, everybody thinks this is really important. So how do you use analytics and insights to drive appropriate conversations and understand those conversations with our customers? Self-service that actually contains and resolves the queries that the customers have. We all know those stories where self-service starts and then ends up in the call centre, or the customer's actually on the self-service platform and calling you at the same time because they're not sure that they're going to get the right level of support. So you want self-service that actually works, has smarts and retains the customer in that. Knowledge management. We all want this feeling that knowledge is provided to the agent at the right time, contextually driven by the conversation that the agent's having with the customer or by where the agent's at using the computer. No point having knowledge that isn't easy to access and timely delivered to you. And then interestingly, the highest rated thing there, single agent view desktop. So the agents want all the information at their fingertips in a seamless way so they can interact with the customer. They have to put the customer on hold. They know what the customer said on the website or in the chat session, etc. So let's just quickly deep dive into some of these results. So as you can see there, 74% said that this was the most important thing, but only 39% of the respondees said they were actually optimising on the insights and analytics space. And 19% said they weren't doing anything, which is a bit of a shock. Sadly though, even those people that do have lots and lots of insights and analytics in their organisation, they're not actually doing a lot with them. So they're looking backwards saying, well, this is what happened yesterday, not how can I take these insights and analytics to improve my self-service retention rate, or how can I improve this process and stop the friction that's coming through and disengaging my customers. So that means we want to have insights coming through that look a little bit like the ones we're seeing on the screen here. We want to be able to know which insights and what experiences are impacting the sentiment that the customers have. We want to be able to break that down by the category and the customer. And we want to be able to understand even their sentiment by employee and rank these things on visuals like this so we can really understand the performance of what's happening in our contact centres. And if we can start getting this information, these insights start driving self-service. This is what drives the AI. This is the smarts behind the scenes. There's no point in having technology if you don't have insights and brains to drive it and take it to the right level. So self-service itself, as I said, we really want containment. It's all about holding the customer in that channel and making sure that we can interact with them. And we want the self-service to be the most effective it can in having that conversation, not just a transactional interaction for the customer. So you can see here, scarily, 28% of people said that they had no plans or doing nothing when it came to self-service, which is obviously a huge challenge if can't recruit people fast enough, your call volumes are going up, and you want to move things to self-service, you haven't got a channel, and you haven't got an investment in that space. So what we're starting to see nowadays is self-service where the customer is able to interact with a channel like this one here where it's actually answering questions backwards and forwards for the customer. So it's almost as if the AI is interacting with the customer as if they were a human. And I love that idea where somebody gets off the chat session, like my mother-in-law the other day, and said, I had this really good conversation with this person. And I said, you realise that was an AI-enabled bot? And she's like, well, what's that? I didn't want to try to explain that to her. But that sort of experience is what we're after. We're trying to get this backwards and forwards interaction rather than just a transactional. It's like a conversation with smarts enabled. And you can see here, you can actually, this airline here, you can do your whole booking with this airline via this messaging platform. And they currently do 90% of all their interactions with their customers is via this channel. So knowledge management. So as I said earlier on, knowledge to me is all about real-time contextual knowledge delivered to the agent desktop that's relevant to where that conversation with the customer is at. You don't want the agents having to pull up knowledge repositories and document repositories and put the customer on hold to try and find information. That's not knowledge. We want knowledge that's smart, it's contextual and it's self-learning. And whilst 72% are saying that it's really, really important and 44% think they're practicing optimising, I would seriously doubt that that's actually practicing or optimising AI-enabled knowledge with context-driven information. So there's a lot of work to be done in that space. So you want the knowledge to provide information really simply, really easily to the agents We want the agents to be able to pull up the information and talk to customers in a way where you're able to control the versions of the knowledge and keep it up to date and drive that and constantly improve it and provide the content grouped in the right way that makes sense for the conversations the agent's having with the customers. And there's some really clever solutions out there, and you'll hear a little bit more about knowledge management later on this afternoon. So single view agent desktop. This is probably my favourite area to focus on. As you can see, 76% of people said it was the most important. 27% aren't doing anything at all and have no plans. And to me, actually, this is the future. This is what it all looks like when it all comes together and all the channels are integrated and orchestrated completely and seamlessly. So what you start to see in this sort of environment is an agent bot, a virtual agent responding to the customer queries and answering questions and able to integrate all of these channels together. So for the first time, you start seeing the web channel, the messaging channel, the voice channel, all those channels all coming together, and the agents are able to have all that information presented to at the fingertip, and the customer is able to interact with the virtual agent and then be handed over seamlessly to the physical agent in a contact centre and via another channel. So you can see here that the intelligence behind this platform is able to interact with the customer and have those queries and start driving all that information to the agent so that it's seamless and it's straightforward for the customer and will retain the customer in that space. You can add things like notifications, you can bring all of this together, and then the customer feels like they've had a fantastic experience, but in many cases they've never spoken to a real person. And then it can hand over, as you saw here, to another channel such as WhatsApp or SMS and provide status updates to the agent as we go through. I don't know about you, but I've never found a chat platform where you can start asking it questions like this and you are able to resolve your concerns about your daughter's booking, for example. So we want to make this feel like a really personalised experience and goes back to that white glove customer service. So key things. First thing I'd recommend is that you adopt a customer-centric engagement channel strategy. Now that sounds like a mouthful, but basically it says voice is not enough, messaging is not enough, and that by the time you figure out what your solution is for messaging or something else, technology will have overtaken you. So digital transformation, it's happening all the time. So for all of us, we need to remember that there are constantly evolving channels and you need to orchestrate and understand all of those channels. And once you've figured out what they all are, you need to know what people are saying in each one of those channels. There's no good running speech analytics on voice. You need to understand your text. You need to understand Microsoft Teams. You need to know what people are saying by the messaging channel, etc. You need to then engage your workforce seamlessly because you need to have customers, and you need to understand that customers are going to be going to the branch, the store, the call centre, the back office, talking to a bot, and you need to be able to put all that information together, and you actually need to start rostering people in a store, people in a call centre, people in the back office, and you actually even have to roster bots. So the latest solutions now do workforce management of those resources across the board. And I sort of just said this, scale customer interactions with bots. In other words, think about how you can resource and spread the load of your work across people and technology at the same time. And remember that technology is great for handling didactic, two-way conversations, but the long-running process stuff, the complex queries, the case management things, that's where you need real people to focus on adding value and looking after real customers who need care and support. Thanks, James.
Sorry, Mike. Thank you, Mike. Questions from the audience, got a few. Zoe's asked, how do you find the balance between digital transformations and cyber security or privacy? We want to make it easy and customer-centric, but still protect ourselves.
Yeah, it's interesting. One of the comments in the slide I didn't read, the detail is exactly that. So it's all about how do you look after the customer's information in the most secure fashion. And it's absolutely the challenge is data security and cyber security and so on. Obviously, it's a huge focus in most organisations. So I'd say you make sure your data cybersecurity people are really across everything you do when you implement these solutions. But again, most of the vendors who implement them are doing it on large scale and usually have all the relevant cybersecurity accreditations and so on underway anyway.
Billy asks, Ian, are there any cool technologies in the experimental or trial phase that you think will impact the market over the next 2 to 3 years?
Gosh, I think there's tons and tons coming. Many of them probably we haven't even thought about yet. I think the really interesting one is going to be how things like ChatGPT and others are used in contact centres down the track. And again, you'll hear a little bit more about that later on. My favourite probably is that whole channel automation thing that I showed at the end there, and perhaps some voice enablement of that as well. So you're talking to the channel, and it's routing you and interacting with you back and forth via voice as well. I think would be an exciting development.
Anonymous asks, despite all the automation and self-service, why do call volumes just keep increasing?
Wouldn't we all love to know? Well, I think the big challenge, of course, is that we're basically not seamless enough and frictionless enough with our customers, and customers' expectations are exceeding the level of the organisation. Really, when it comes down to it, none of us would be here if everything was perfect, because customers would never ring and never interact with us, because it would all be done beautifully. So until we remove the friction points and automate the simple stuff, customers are still going to call. And until they feel 100% trusting in the interactions you've got with them, they're going to ring because they don't trust that the other technologies are solving their issues.
That's right. And someone just asked in the chat, will the slides used in today's presentation be made available? The answer is yes. We're going to have the whole report. We're videoing today, and the slides will all be put on a digital platform. So don't get writer's cramp. You'll be able to access this in the future. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together to thank Ian from Varennes. And I'd like to welcome Daniel Harding from the stage to talk about the findings from our remote working chapter. Things are moving so quickly that this wasn't in our first 2 reports, but it's become such vital information to understand how the industry is approaching work from home. So please welcome Daniel from Max Contact.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you, James. Yes, my name's Daniel from Max Contact. That is an up-to-date photo, so at least I've done one thing. We partnered a couple of years ago with James and the Smart team to go through the remote working section. This is a highly anticipated section. It's the first one since 2019 that hasn't been affected at all. Unfortunately, I will mention the C word a few times in this presentation, COVID. It's the first time since, even last year when we did it in 2022, it was affected by Victoria and New South Wales being in lockdown. So we've actually got figures now that are clean. There's no government rules. There's no things getting in the way. So we understand that people like working from home, but I think before we get too deep into it, we'll have to set the scene as to how many people we have working from home, why we've still got so many people working from home, and if that will ever change. So to begin with, last year when we asked this question, we had 76% of people working from home on any given day, which is not surprising considering rules in place at the time, etc. We know that markets, financial institutions, etc., want to get people back into CBDs. You only have to walk around and see places that are shut down. They want people in here spending money, buying sandwiches, buying coffee, buying drinks, etc. At the moment, when we've asked it, we're back down to 57%, which may not be a surprise to you guys in the room, but it's actually higher than what was anticipated when we asked the question last year. We asked, how many people do you think will be working from home after COVID? And the answer then was 48%, so we're actually higher than what we anticipated. We've been thinking why that could be. There's probably a number of reasons, and we'll go through them in a moment. Is it better absenteeism? Are we better working from home? Can we just not get people to come into the office anymore? People enjoy the flexibility. They want to save costs, they save time, they save money. And people just demand it. So why do we still have so many people working from home? So to start with, absenteeism. I read a report on the weekend that said the Australian industry loses between $14 and $22 billion per year on sick leave, which is not a bad estimate when you've got $8 billion to leeway. So saving any percent on that is huge. Obviously that was the whole of Australia, not just this industry, but if you're saving money in that sense, that is huge. Interestingly, this has gone down from last year, so we're improving. People are not calling in sick as much when they are working from home. And you can see that on here. So interestingly as well, we've dropped from 6% to 1% on people who are actually calling in more when they're working from home. So again, is that human nature? Is that they don't want to be dragged back into the office if they seem to be pulling the wool over the eyes? And again, it's probably a lot of a human nature as into why people call in sick less when working from home. Is it days where they're not feeling too good, they think, I can actually manage to get downstairs, but I don't feel like getting on a train and a bus and going into the office? Is it days where you don't feel like they're 100% and you don't want to pass anything on to colleagues, but they can still sit in a computer in a room by themselves? Is it other things as well? Is it like the flexibility? So we know people, human nature again, take time off when they're not really sick. It may be for a doctor's appointment, it may be for a school event or a sports day or whatever it may be. Rather than doing that, they can actually be flexible. They don't have to commute to a city, come back in, come back out. So why could that be? So at the moment, we can see we've got more people than what we anticipated working from home. We've got them available more than what we ever did. But how are they working? There's no point having all these amazing people but not doing a useful job. So we asked senior leaders how people are performing at home, and 70% said they see no change in CSAT at all, and that's from the senior leaders side. So we've probably got better systems in place. People are more accustomed to it. The consumer's more used to speaking to someone who's actually at home, being the customer, being on the other end of the line. 62% of senior leaders said equally effective working from home as well. So again, we've got better systems in place. We've got knowledge management tools, workforce management tools, etc., where we're just definitely better at doing it. People have better environments and not sitting on the kitchen table. Most people have a dedicated space for working from home now. Technology has obviously been improved over the last few years to get over the initial hurdle of working from home quickly to ramping that up. We did have to ask the question to the agents how they see themselves working from home. This answer hasn't changed at all from last year. They think they're more productive working from home by quite a considerable percent. Now the problem, people working from home, I think it's 74% of agents said they would choose to work from home on any given day. But the big problem is, and when we've asked senior leaders, is how do we keep them engaged? We asked senior leaders what the biggest challenge was with people working from home. And the big thing for them was disconnection, employee engagement, and mental health. They were really not too concerned about technology, customer satisfaction, etc. It was all the human side again, which is interesting. Agents are demanding working from home, but it's the social distance and being away from people which actually gets people down. So we asked managers what they've seen as the best ways of maintaining that employee engagement. Last year, the quiz was dying a slow death, and this year it's completely gone. No one wants to do a quiz tomorrow. One of the main things was increasing communication. So that was communication between the peers of people. So having easy tools to communicate with each other. They're going to miss that chat. They're going to miss the office break and chatting to the friends, seeing what they did on the weekend, what the plans are, etc. They want tools that are quick and easy to communicate. Likewise, increasing visibility to their direct team leaders, etc. So every conversation you have with your direct peer or your direct team leader is not going to be a formal one-on-one, once-a-month meeting. They actually want to have a quick, easy chat with team leaders when they can. So scheduling time in, having a normal conversation such as, again, what did you get up to, what are we doing, how am I going, just in a casual way, which they may normally have when you get caught in a lift with the boss or waiting for a coffee, whatever it may be. Flexible working was a huge one again. So people say, yes, I want to work from home more than coming into the office, but working from home doesn't mean being chained to your desk 9 till 5. You want to be flexible with that. You want shorter shifts. You want to be able to work in short sprints, change times, etc., do things on the fly. You want to be able to go to events. You want to take time off. You want to work hours that suit their life, not being stuck there for 8 hours in a go. Which is quite ironic because Anchor Days was also popular. Anchor Days being when agents have to come in or when team leaders have to come in on certain days. So whether that's once a month, a couple of times a month, certain teams coming in, doing events together. That's proved to be a really good way of getting people connected, getting people talking, meeting new people who may have joined the team that you wouldn't have a normal conversation with online. But if we're telling people we're going to be more flexible, etc., but then telling them when we come in, the next thing to cover is flexibility. So you'll see here on the figures from last year, we've dropped quite considerable, down to 17% on what we call full flexibility. Again, that will be heavily diluted because last year, even if a company wanted to, they had no choice, likewise with the no flexibility. But has it totally gone? It hasn't really. What we're seeing is more of a move to the middle, so a bit of common sense, a bit of common ground between senior leaders, agents, businesses on when people come in, how often they come in, and how flexible their shift can be. So it's really good that we're seeing this. We're seeing improvements on that, and it'll be interesting to see how it goes over the next couple of years, but I'd imagine that's going to level out pretty much in the middle. But we've got all this, so at the moment we can see we've got more people working from home than what we expected. They're coming in more often, they're performing as well, or if not even better. But we've got more roles that are being applied because of this. One of the main ones in the overwhelming response was WFM roles, so workforce management roles. So you can't do all this rostering on Excel sheets, etc. You've got to have an expert in, you've got to be able to really define this and improve the business in that way. The next one was operational support. So last year, team leaders overwhelmingly said they hated dealing with tech issues for people working from home. So headsets, the internet's not working, I need to do a Microsoft update, whatever it may be. They absolutely hated it. So now we've got dedicated roles where people are there as that operational point of contact, getting it more smoother, keeping the team leaders able to do what they want to do. Training and development was next up. So again, totally different type of role, and that goes from new starters and people developing in the business. So with new starters, you can't train them in the house, you can't go around, you can't tell them to sit on a buddy's shoulder who lives 2 kilometers away. You've got to be able to do it differently. Likewise, with developments, contact centers, as you know, people work their way up. It's a good career path for people who are dedicated. But how do you find the people who want to do that when they're not standing out in the crowd? So we've seen development roles where people are really engaged on developing people working from home. Oops, I must have brought that screen, it's gone off. And then designated work from home team leaders as well. So team leaders for people working from home is totally different to having people in front of you. You've got to read the room differently. You've got to be able to check in. You've got to have short chats with them. You've got to be more approachable. It's a different type of role. Even monitoring their performance is totally different. You've got to key in. You've got to get a good sense of how it's going. So our key findings this year are that we've got more people working from home than what we expected. This will be really interesting on how this goes next year. We have asked the question, how it's going to go next year. Predicted to drop by about 17%. Whether that happens or not, I'm not too sure. You'll have to come back next year and buy tickets to see how that goes. We've got a big move to middle on flexibility. So, as I mentioned before, common sense, people are using it. We're allowing people to work when they want, where they want, within reason, with a good bit of give and take. And the absentee rate is improving. So the guys are going to go in more detail on absenteeism, but if we can continue to improve that, the cost savings, the lack of disruption, etc., is a huge find. And that'll be interesting to see how that goes over the next few years as human nature comes in and we're well settled into this environment. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel. Daniel's presentation is also available in subtitles if you struggle with his wonderful accent.
I think we're going to come up on the side.
Daniel, we've got about 15 questions in 3 minutes, so thank you for everyone who's putting them in. Elliot has asked, Elon Musk, I haven't seen him here, I don't think he's here, so recently came out saying that remote working is morally wrong. What are the biggest threats, do you think, to long-term hybrid working arrangements? Is it just that old school attitude?
I'm not sure. He's got a couple more dollars than me, so we may know a bit more. I don't know. I think most people, common sense, most people are more trusting with it, with working from home. I'm not sure. Morally wrong seems a bit harsh.
It is very harsh, isn't it? We've got one here from Luke. How do you think remote work will affect the geographic distribution of talent and job opportunities in the future? Yeah,
good question. Obviously now you can hire from anywhere. Your job opportunities, you can be anywhere in the country for it. So distribution-wise, you're probably seeing centres that are across the nation now rather than being stuck in one place or one area. So Yeah, I'm not sure how we'll go with in terms of obviously different places having different wages, how that will balance out, because probably a bit of a move to the middle on that sense.
Pavel asks, with the cost of living going up, how do you see this impacting work from home for agents?
Yeah, good one. I'd imagine most people would want to work from home a lot more. Don't have to put fuel in the car, don't have to travel, don't have the temptation of buying stuff at the other end. If they're saving $20, $30 a day and you can work from home, every penny counts.
Yep. And we'll go with one last question. Thank you, everyone, for sending them through. Jason said, we're starting to see CEOs force a return to offices, and some of you might have seen that this week. The NAB Bank have asked senior staff to come back, and there's thought that they're going to ask all staff to come back at least 4 days of the week. Will this speed up the death of work from home, and do I need to mow my lawns on the weekend instead of lunchtime on Monday now?
Yeah, good question. I've got artificial grass, so I'm not sure. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, you guess if it's driven from the top, but agents have got the power, people have got the power for jobs, and if they demand working from home, the lower levels might be harder to pull back in. Management, etc., could be easy to get back on board.
Right. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together to thank Daniel from Max Contact. Alrighty, I'd like to welcome to the stage now Tim Buzzer from Attune, who's going to take us through the absenteeism and attrition section. Welcome, Tim.
Thank you.
As we're sitting down, for those of you who follow Tim on LinkedIn, you haven't been in Australia much. Where have you been?
No, actually, to give a bit of context to this answer, so Attune is a schedule flexibility app. So our passion is enabling people to live their dreams and have their dream career at the same time. So what that's been looking like for me is I've spent most of the last year, we bought a car in India, a four-wheel drive, and have been driving across the Himalayas, getting police escorts, or actually army escorts in Kashmir, driving over mountain passes where we had to use oxygen because we're at over 18,000 feet. And all whilst doing that, I was working full-time, starting up a new company and selling Attune to the Australian call centre industry. So it's been a great journey. Now I'm living in Athens, starting my next adventure, learning how to sail. So yeah, we live the promise.
Fantastic, not a dull moment. Well, this data is always interesting, Tim. So let's start off with absenteeism first. We can see that in 2021 across the industry it was 10%. Things improved to 9% in our last report, but we've gone backwards.
Yeah, it's a pretty dramatic result, and one thing that really jumps out, you'll see on this report, is that there is a correlation between the absenteeism and the size of the call centre. So call centres less than 100 FTE or 100 heads are tracking between 12 and 13%. Between 100 and 100 and 300, it's 14, 15%. And then once you get over 300, it jumps right up to 18%. So that's a massive, really strong correlation. So something's happening there. There's also one other interesting stat that's in the report, which is that there's a big gap between the top and the worst performers in our industry. So there's some people out there who are doing an exceptionally good job with absenteeism. The best performing 15% of contact centres in Australia are getting 7% or less. So that's a great number. But the worst performing, the top 11%, they're actually getting over 25% absenteeism. So we've got more than 10% of the industry sitting above 25%. So there's a big gap and certainly a sign that some are adapting to the shift in employee expectations post-COVID and others that are finding that more challenging.
Why do you think historically our industry has had such high absenteeism?
Yeah, I think the call centre role has had particular challenges attached to it historically, and those challenges are starting to be addressed. But ultimately, it's going to come down to how we engage our employees, and that's no secret. And as we can see, clearly the large call centres are struggling to engage their employees compared to the small call centres. And engagement is not rocket science to us or any of us now in this industry. It's a challenge we've all been leaning into, but it doesn't mean that it's easy to solve. So we know that employees want to feel valued and appreciated. We know they want to feel a sense of belonging. They know that it's important to have human connection. We know that employees want flexibility and they want to be able to fit work into their lives. So we know what we need to do, but for some of us, it's quite a challenge to lean into.
Yep. So peak absenteeism is a measure we record, and what peak absenteeism means is, at one point throughout the year, when your absenteeism really skyrocketed, what did it hit? And again, we've seen that go up significantly over the last 12 months. Why do you think that is?
Yeah, well, first of all, there's no correlation here between the size of the call centre. So statistically, that points to that there must have been a common experience across the whole industry that drove that peak absenteeism over the last 12 months. And there's no surprise, and we'll see on the next slide, that was people sick and COVID. So COVID jumps out as one of the main drivers of peak absenteeism. Just jump to the next slide. Yep.
I just want to clarify, because the questions come through about how we measure. So this is on any given day. This is on any given day, 25% of the workforce is absent.
Yeah, so there it is, seasonal illness and COVID right at the top there, clearly at the top. So that was a difficult time last year when COVID ran through our community, and we all experienced the pain of that. There's one other stat that I want to celebrate, which is that if you look down the bottom there, increased mental health leave has dropped from 7% down to 2%. So that's a huge win, and I know that's a challenge that as call centre managers and executives, we've all been struggling with since even before COVID. It was one of the biggest challenges facing the industry. So I think that's something we should all celebrate, that I think through COVID, one of the benefits is that everybody inside the organisation has grown awareness on the importance of looking after each other's and our own mental health, and that increased focus is coming through in a really positive way here.
So we've identified the problem. What are some of the solutions that the report finds?
Yeah, so flexibility is key right now, and we're in a tough recruitment market, and those that are distinguishing themselves are offering work from home. It's definitely something that the market is asking for. We'll go through in more detail in future sessions later this afternoon, where we can see really clearly that that's what candidates are asking for. And where we have flexibility around working from home, and interestingly, flexibility around rosters. So that's jumping out really strongly here. In fact, even more impactful than being able to work from home is our ability to offer schedule flexibility.
So moving from absenteeism to attrition, we've just had the year of the Great Resignation. Industry average for attrition has gone up. But again, we're seeing a really big correlation. If you have a look at the stats there, contact centres, the large contact centres have really had it far worse. Why are larger contact centres having worse absenteeism and worse attrition than small ones?
Yeah.
Please, can you answer that for us?
I would love to. Actually, this afternoon we've got a great session on employee engagement. So the simple, reality is that when we have strong employee engagement, we're going to see improvements in absenteeism and attrition. So there's some fantastic results in that report, in the session this afternoon, that probably worth paying extra attention to, because it definitely correlates back to our absenteeism and attrition. Absenteeism is definitely a lead indicator for attrition. So if we're seeing, it's not surprising that it's a similar correlation and a similar trend between the two figures.
So just looking at some of the questions that have come through, somebody's asked, is there a difference between in-sourced and outsourced centres in terms of this data? From a report point of view, we haven't differentiated the two yet. A little bit of it is around making sure we've got enough responses for each individual group. But what's your analysis in terms of your experience, Tim? Are in-sourced contact centres generally doing better in those areas than outsourced?
Yeah, generally. Yeah, to be fair, I've worked in both sides of that question, and the reality is in outsourcing it's incredibly challenging. You're running very tight margins, and so you just don't have as many tools at your disposal to engage your employees. But at the same time, there's probably more focus in outsourcing as well, because the impact of absenteeism on the bottom line is felt more strongly. So yeah, it's sort of horses and courses. I think there's probably some great performers on both outsourcing and in-house call centres. So I wouldn't say that's a general truth, but yeah, on the whole.
So when an agent leaves a contact centre, they don't always move externally though. What are your thoughts on where agents go when they're leaving our centres?
Yeah, isn't this a good news story and also a sign of the challenge that we're all facing? I think the good news here is that call centres, despite the fact that nearly 60% of call centre roles are working from home, they're still performing as the talent incubators for the business. They're still offering as the front door for people to build their careers from, even though they're working from home. And I know when we all started to go working from home, that was our big concern, that we would lose that value proposition for our people, that call centres would stop being that career first step that would then build a career within the organisation. But that's still happening. 26% of people are pursuing a different career or moving within the organisation. But we are still seeing the great resignation being felt. I don't think it's gone away. And look at myself, I'm an example. I sat at home during COVID and thought, what is it I value the most? What are the things that I want to achieve in my life, personally and professionally? How can I make that happen? And for me, that was extreme, obviously driving across Himalayas, doing crazy things. But for everybody, that's something. We've all reassessed what the priority stack is in our life. And because of that reassessment, we're now valuing things like spending quality time with our loved ones, connecting with those that we love the most, doing the things that we love the most. And if a job doesn't support that, then people are just going to move on.
Rostering flexibility is going to come up a few times today. Why do you think it has had such a big impact if we look at the change in responses there to the same question year on year? Why is it having such an impact on why frontline agents do or don't leave their current jobs?
It's interesting. I've probably got one main thought on that is that before COVID and post-COVID, we were all trying to address absenteeism and attrition, but kind of with one hand behind our back. So there's two buckets of initiatives that I see that we have at our disposal. One is the ability to deploy initiatives that will improve the experience on the job so that people will want to come to work. And we've been working in that space a lot in the industry, trying to find ways to make the job better. Years ago, it was about providing pizza and fruit on Friday afternoons, and we've come a long way with gamification and employee engagement programs and initiatives to improve the experience on the job. And that's been a big focus. But now there's a second bucket of initiatives available, which is how do we make the job fit into people's lives better? And that starts with work from home, and we've now moved to that to collectively as an industry. But there's more tools coming into the market that we've now got at our disposal that enable us to solve for that. And if we can do both those things, enable work to fit into people's lives better and also make the experience on the job better, then we're going to create a more attractive role and people are going to stick around.
Tim, take us through the key findings for this chapter.
Yeah, so the gap between the best and the worst is growing, and that's something we all should be worried about. I think events like this are really important, so I think sharing across the industry so that we're all learning from each other is something we need to lean into. There's a bit of a history of us of all commercial industries being somewhat competitive. I think when it comes to employee experience, that's something that I think we can open our doors on more and learn from the best and share more. COVID is over, but we're not going backwards. So we're hearing stories like the one we just heard before about businesses mandating people to come back into the office more and more. I am nervous about that because I think it's not listening to what people want. And ultimately, industries, we will continue to see this gap widening where people are providing a fantastic employee experience, being increasingly flexible, and at the same time delivering a great on-the-job experiencing and enabling career paths and great work futures, and others that are falling back into the trap of trying to go back to the old. And I think that they are going to be the losers.
A lot of questions come through, Tim, probably about 20. So let me just pick out a couple because we've only got a minute or two. Grant's asked, do you think the higher absenteeism in larger centres is because of the perception that they don't make a difference? I mean, probably the individual doesn't make a difference.
Yeah, so I touched on before, one of the most important drivers of engagement in a workplace is a sense of belonging. So if it's a large workplace, it's logical to think that somebody could feel lost in the crowd, not identified, not valued, not appreciated. So when it's a small business, that's obviously much easier to create that feeling in the environment. So in a large business, I think the pressure falls more on the leaders who are communicating with their people on a regular basis to make sure that that sentiment is being conveyed. So yeah, I agree with the premise of that question, that it's highly likely that that's one of the key drivers.
Well, if you want to chat further with Tim or his colleague Elliot during the break or this afternoon, he'll be hanging around. But ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together and thank Tim from Attune.
Thank you very much.
No, just leave it, yeah. You want to pass it to Lawrence as he comes up? And we'd like to welcome to the stage Lawrence Dell from PwC, and Lawrence is going to take us through the key findings on the chapter we call Centre Performance. Welcome, Lawrence.
Thank you. Thank you, and good afternoon, everyone. Lawrence Dell, I'm a partner at PwC, and I specialise in productivity improvement in the service and sales transformation space. So nice to see you all here today, and I also want to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands we are meeting on today and pay my respects. So I'm delighted to be able to take you through the contact centre performance chapter of the report this year, and please think about your own centre and how you may compare to some of these metrics as we go through them. I'm going to start by defining GOS and ASA, because being a management consultant, we get accused of using too many three-letter acronyms, TLAs, all the time, and I certainly got feedback from a very senior client a few months ago when I presented our findings on their centre and what they could do, and I led off with a whole bunch of recommendations based on AHT and FCR, and I'll tell you, after about 2 minutes of the opening, I got a lot of TLAs back from that client, just giving me some feedback to make sure that we're very clear on what these things are. So GOS, grade of service, is basically how many calls or interactions are answered within a specific time frame, and then ASA is the speed of answer on average across those calls coming in. So interestingly, on GOS performance, 55% of the respondents are not meeting GOS targets. So that's a pretty big miss. It's pretty material and pretty consistent. In terms of what is most common, the 80-30 and 80-20 are most common. So 80% taken within 30 seconds, or 80% of calls taken within 20. Now, is that right? Well, it's up to you. To get the GOS target, at that type of level requires investment and requires people to be there to handle calls. So some clients say their board wants their centre to answer within 2 rings. Well, that's fine, but the exponential cost of having people to take that spike in demand, to have that consistent GOS, is certainly a big investment. So, what's the right investment? How much do I invest in service to achieve a GOS target is probably the question you need to be considering in your own context. What's also important about GOS is not just the measure itself, but how frequently you're measuring it. Centres are dynamic by nature, and so a regular measurement of GOS is key. Let's have a look at ASA year on year. So looking at ASA, 20% improvement on year, and I've got some stats here in terms of the leaders and the laggards. So the leaders in the top quartile were achieving 25 seconds on average ASA. Now that's pretty fast. And then the laggards were around that 111. Now we've also got abandonment up, which has risen slightly year on year from 7 to 9%. Now why is abandonment going up? Could be a couple of reasons, perhaps because of that GOS not being achieved. So customers, there might be times where you're calling in the day and the GOS is bad, and so people are hanging up. Often people can also be multi-channeling. So I'm on the phone, on chat, and can resolve online and actually just abandon. Concluding here, I think this to sort of achieve what you're trying to achieve, to get this experience to best practice, it's about excellent workforce management and planning, and making sure you've got the team set up in the right way to take the calls as they come in. And questions our clients are asking are, should we go to team of teams? Do we multi-skill? Or do we stick on single skill with high volume demands and push those through? So interesting operating model questions about how you structure your teams to go and take calls to achieve excellent grade of service and ASA. This next page is in terms of the measures that people are looking at and what's most important. And I love this because up the top is customer feedback. And certainly I think it recognises a shift happening across the sector, that these interactions that our customers are having with all of us are the critical moments that matter. And so a shift from AHT and other sort of performance metrics into CSAT, I think is a really encouraging result. Interestingly, we did bring shrinkage as a new measure in this year, but that doesn't rate as important. Last year, GOS was number 1, and that's now slid to 6th position. Overall, getting a balance here is critical because we all know how interdependent all the measures are in a contact centre. Okay, so overall, out of everyone surveyed, 74 out of 100 was the CSAT result for all the centres. Interestingly, when we looked at the detail, 16% of centres were not seeking any customer feedback. So if you're one of the 16%, I'd probably encourage you to look at that and change that, because it is the closest connection point to the customer, and moving the dial a little bit on customer feedback will have a big impact on retention, sales, and overall experience for the brand. So let's have a look at sort of the spread of scores. 89 out of 100 for leaders. How many in the room would say their centre's operating around 80, 89%? Okay, I won't ask what everyone else is operating at then. But yeah, interestingly, some very good results there. Congratulations. You can come up later. Okay, centre performance. Let's roll on to this page, which this one I found, if I'm frank, a little bit concerning in terms of measuring performance and using data to help run the centre. And so when we look at these metrics, nearly 3 in 4 people who surveyed do not use performance metrics on a daily basis. And interestingly, when we help our clients drive performance improvement, we would typically see a 15 to 20% uplift in performance by just having the right measures measured daily, and that data being the basis of a performance conversation and coaching conversation. So I think there's a big gap there. Also a little concerning is that when that data is collected, more often than not, it's only shared one-on-one. And again, we typically would advise, when sharing and having these coaching conversations, this data should be shared across the team, should be transparent. We should be understanding why Lawrence is doing 10 complaints a day and Jim's only doing 7. So in terms of some of the key findings, we've got 3 M's here. Wanted to keep it in a nice theme. So model, as I said, the structure, the span of skills, and the setup of teams is critical to make the most out of GOS and achieving your ASA targets. Secondly, make sure what you measure is the right measure for your strategy, that it's done daily, that it's transparently shared, and that those performance measures are there and available for everyone on a daily basis. So there's a quick summary, and happy to take some questions.
Thank you, Lawrence. Definitely got some questions. Matthew asks, do you think there is a correlation with the abandonment rates going up with more and more people working from home?
Yeah, I'm not sure about that one. Look, I think definitely people are, less patient, you know, and are happier to sort of get off, call back later at another time. So, yeah, perhaps that's underpinning that.
Luke asks, what research has been done in the industry to better understand customer tolerance of wait time before it actually detracts from CSAT? I guess that's the magic number.
That is the magic question, right? So how long can we make someone wait before they will hang up and they won't make a transaction? That is a question we're asked, and I think it requires, you know, a significant amount of analysis on sensitivity and the particular customers.
Because for the customer, they'd love to have zero wait time, wouldn't they? But then you've got an over-resourced contact centre. Steve's asked, do you think AB, and I'm not 100% sure what AB stands for, has climbed due to people at home tending to have less visibility to wallboards, etc., or peers and leaders reminding calls on hold, etc.?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think to the point around daily metrics, how you're surfacing those metrics, your daily visual management boards, how you're having the conversations around those metrics on a daily basis, that is all the DNA of great team leadership, great empowerment of staff. So working from home, you know, it's very hard to have that same level of interaction and coaching and then side conversation.
Chris has asked, what are your top suggestions to target a backlash in group coaching and certain agents feeling targeted by those results, if not one-on-one? Yeah,
I think that's important to set up that it's a learning culture and a continuous improvement culture, and you know, we're seeing a greater movement towards team-based metrics. So it's about the team and how the team can learn from each other. And, you know, I might have had a bad day, or I had a particularly unlucky run of type of people calling, which meant I've been on the phone a lot longer and being able to close fewer. We all have those days. So I think creating that right team environment where we're sharing that, learning from each other, that's a positive, as opposed to, I think setting up a culture of, you know, pinpointing. So it's up to the team leader, I think, to do that in the right way.
And finishing on a lighter note, Paolo asks, we've had complaints for customers about our hold music. Is there an ideal song or album that the industry has been using?
God, I wish I
guess it might depend. Like if it's a superannuation fund, you might choose something that's slightly older. If it's, you know.
Yeah, that's right.
All right. We'll leave it there. Ladies and gentlemen, please thank Lawrence from PwC. Thanks, mate. All righty, we are going to segue nicely now from centre experience to customer service, and I'd like to welcome Belinda from NICE. Please make her feel very welcome.
Thanks, James. Thanks, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Belinda Hayden. I'm the Director of Strategic Alliances for NICE, and it's my pleasure today to cover the customer experience section of the Contact Centre 2023 Best Practice Report. So customer experience is at the heart of commercial success, and increasingly it's one of the key differentiators in competitive and web-based markets. And sometimes it's actually the only factor that distinguishes the organisation from another, especially in homogenous markets, such as utilities, and you don't sort of get a better quality of gas if you switch suppliers, you know, from one to another. So it's usually really just the customer experience that separates an organisation from another. And even in non-homogenous markets, things like, you know, insurance, it's usually during the claims or some kind of personal interaction with an organisation, and therefore the contact centre again, that really distinguishes the business. And we all know examples of when done badly and publicly, CX can destroy a brand. So its visibility and measurement remain absolutely key. While NPS actually remains the primary customer experience measure, CSAT is holding steady, And internal metrics are gaining ground this year as well. It's interesting to note the adoption of behavior or output-based metrics, such as retention, churn, and customer lifetime value, which could be viewed as the output of customer satisfaction into this mix. And interestingly, while NPS is at 66% in 2023, this was a steady increase from 62% last year and 56% in 2020 pre-pandemic. And conversely, CSAT is currently at 54%, and that remains similar to the 53% last year and just 51% in 2020, so much slower growth, showing that really the growth shift has been back towards NPS, away from CSAT since the last year. And I think that this reflects that organizations are deriving some of their CSAT insights from multiple sources, including unstructured intelligence. And my hypothesis is that this trend would continue as AI-based CSAT intelligence continues to mature. So what methods are used to actually capture customer satisfaction? Well, predominantly email, and I think it makes sense that the methods deployed to capture customer satisfaction, irrespective of the channel of interaction, are predominantly email at 59%, followed by still IVR, post-call survey, at 31%. So these numbers haven't changed significantly since last year, but there has been a 26% drop since 2020 in the use of post-call IVR survey, which is down from 42% in 2020. And the shift of feedback captured to the digital space, mainly to email, doesn't come as a huge surprise. I think it aligns with customer convenience and omni-channel strategies. And the only method that has increased significantly since 2020 actually is SMS, which has increased by 46% since 2020. And I think partly that is reflected by the way that actually telco bundles are now presented in Australia. And it used to be, and it still is, very prevalent in the States for people to use SMS survey, because typically they will sort of send you one question, and if you respond, they may send you another question, and that may keep going for sort of like 4 or 5 questions. And a few years ago in Australia, we didn't necessarily have the core bundles that would mean that text messages were included. So it may have meant, and in fact, I think there was some kind of legislation around it as well, that meant that the consumer was potentially paying for those text messages. But I think the way everything has been rebundled has had some impact into that shift. So I'd keep my eye on the SMS take-up and be interested to know what that number is next year. Okay. So something interesting with the NPS and the unstructured data, and full disclosure here, when Bain & Company introduced the NPS methodology in 2003, although personally I think it seems much older than that, but that could also just be my age, Bain actually worked in collaboration with NICE's customer feedback tool, Satmetrics, to do that. So, you know, we do have a strong pedigree with the NPS, but it is limited in its visibility. It gives you a number. It also allows you, you know, to benchmark and to show the trend. But the obvious question asked generally by management when you say, you know, our NPS is up this month, down this month, or is better in this section than that section, is why? And so that's where your verbatims really come in handy, is, you know, even though they can be quite short responses, is for people to give information such as, you know, well, you know, you answered my question, but I shouldn't have had to have called at all, or, you know, the agent was helpful, but this, but that, whatever. So I've actually spent more hours than I probably care to calculate comparing NPS scores against verbatims. And something I've always found very interesting is when you're looking at the scores that are zeros and ones, I would say probably about 10% of those zeros and ones don't match the corresponding verbatims. And what will often happen is you'll see zeros and ones with a comment that says something like, I've given you a 0 because I just don't recommend anybody to anybody. That's not my thing. But it was really good. It was an excellent interaction, which is always really unfair because you're like, well, that's a 9 then, you know. But customers can't be sort of taught the official methodology. And I think one of my favorite examples of that is probably something we're all familiar with. We may all have seen it on Facebook or LinkedIn or whatever, is the Microsoft example where someone gave a 0 or a 1 and said, you know, what I need you to understand is that I don't go around discussing and recommending Windows operating schemes to my friends and family. It's like, okay, fair enough. So consumers won't always play by the rules of the methodologies that we set with them. However, that said, it is encouraging that 61% of respondents now include free text in some questions, because I think you really do need that to get some level of insight. And I think that some of that is down to the ability of organizations to harness that unstructured data for rich insights. However, looking at the next stat, there is some dissonance in capturing free text at over 60% and actually analysing that unstructured data at less than 20%, suggesting that, you know, a considerable amount of rich data may be available and yet untapped, which really seems like a shame. Still, that 61% is pretty high compared to just 24% in 2022. So that's a huge shift in those that are actually capturing that data, which I think is very positive. And I think as a solution, analytics, unstructured data analysis has finally moved into the mainstream and earned its credibility alongside these quantitative KPIs and metrics. And given the acceptance of solutions in this space, I would anticipate that organizations continue to move towards a more complete analysis of direct and indirect feedback. In other words, you know, asking for and also those that are just present in the conversations to gain further insights into customer experience, with the trend now shifting towards AI and predictive deployments of analytics. Okay, moving along. So currently we are still seeing, however, quite disparate execution on customer feedback information. Most customer feedback is actioned to varying degrees of formality and structure. At least 2/3 of organizations use customer feedback for systemic changes and improvements, which is positive. But at least 25% of respondents say that they don't really use it formally, and it's a more informal or inconsistent approach. And for me, I think this underlines the complexity of operationalizing this type of technology. It's one thing to deploy and measure customer experience technology, whether it's direct, indirect, unstructured, structured, voice, text, new channels, etc. The challenge still appears to be a cohesive framework and an internal structure that drives organizational improvements from the insights provided. And I think that's still very much the challenge in some organizations. Apologies for the very small font on that, but it will be in the books when you get it later. Okay. So this in turn gives us a new challenge as businesses are looking to adopt consistent quality approach across emerging and disparate channels. So quality monitoring in contact centers generally is ubiquitous, but quality across email, web chat, social and digital interactions, especially hybrid interactions is still inconsistent. And I think many organisations will admit to not monitoring or managing quality at all across some of these, never mind consistently. And these results really demonstrate that this disparity still exists, but the gap, I think, has narrowed significantly, with more than 70% aligned or somewhat aligned across their provided channels, which is good news. So for me, one of the key questions was the extent to which CX-style KPIs were perceived to be important and critical to the exec team amongst all the other management information that they have presented to them. And given that CX KPIs have really had to fight for their seat at the table, it's really encouraging that nearly 50% of respondents were confident in their visibility and priority to the executive team. Conversely, nearly 30%, the 11 plus the 13%, were less confident that the executive team viewed CX KPIs as important. And again, I think perhaps the tangible impact of this information needs to be simpler to demonstrate to move it up the agenda. So finally, it's evident that more and more organisations are taking note of the important role that customer experience plays in the success of a business, and NPS and CSAT remain key measurements of performance. While the last few years have been marked by incredible disruption, rapid digital transformation, the data shows that organisations are now taking the time to really reassess and optimize their technology deployments, especially when it comes to the voice of the customer. And the voice of the customer is increasingly playing an important role in that review, which I think is very positive for the contact center. It's gaining in visibility within the organization. More than 1/5 of respondents are reportedly already using an advanced voice of the customer program across all channels, which drives product development and improvements in quality and service. Omnichannel and omnichannel feedback is a key trend that will continue to grow as customers demand increasing flexibility of engagement, and organizations definitely need to monitor those channels. And finally, the data shows that executives are starting to take more notice of the contact center and the role that CX plays, and the technology is now established in this space, and it's progressing now, I think, through automated and AI-driven coverage. Ultimately, I anticipate that this will have a significant impact on how business and technology strategies intersect, and it will drive the need for organizations to prioritize CX information and put a lot more trust in its capabilities. Thanks, James.
Thank you, Belinda. Excellent. Such an important chapter.
Thank you.
I've had about 24 questions come through, but we've only got time for one. Safe asked, what are your thoughts on sharing poor CX ratings on a team level to identify causes and trends? Should there be transparency in accessing poor results?
Oh, excellent question. Personally, I think as long as it's not individual, I'm okay with that concept. However, I think it's also important to note that a lot of the times the feedback that customers give is not directed at the agent at all. Even if the question is, how was your experience with the agent today? And this is another example of, the score not matching the verbatim, is when the question is, how would you rate your experience with the agent today? They might give a score that, either is a 7 or something, and then in the verbatim they might sort of punish the brand, or vice versa. They might give a 2 or 3 and say something like, well, the experience was actually, great, but I hate the fact that I had to call in the first place, or you generally suck, or something like that. So I think as long as you're going to be fully transparent and accept responsibility for all the organisational faults as well, and say, you know, we recognise that we're not always making it easy for our agents, and that you're copping some of the flack for that, then I think if you can balance that out, I'm okay with it.
Great. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together to thank Belinda from NICE. And I'd like to welcome to the stage to talk about modern ways of working, Sean McGinn from the Agile Contact Centre. Welcome, Sean.
Thanks, James. G'day, everyone. As James said, I'm Sean McGinn, the Director of the Agile Contact Centre, and I am very excited to be with you all here today to talk about modern ways of working. For those that haven't heard of us before, we're a contact centre consulting firm that helps leaders just like you guys build low-effort customer experiences, highly connected and engaged employee experiences, and really efficient operating models. And those three core objectives that you guys grapple with every day aren't hard to balance. In fact, it's a pretty hard job. It's a bit like walking a tightrope while someone's throwing flaming swords at you at the same time as trying to tame a lion. It looks beautiful when you pull it all together, but mostly it's a terrifying high wire act. And so it's a pretty tough gig. It's a complex beast. And this makes leading your contact centre, planning, prioritising and delivering great work really, really challenging. But if I could sum up modern ways of working with one word, it would be adaptability. The ability for you to effortlessly manage all the complex change that hits your contact centre, whether that's a pandemic, whether it's high attrition, UPA, call volume that's really high, poor CSAT scores, even the exciting yet scary world of AI. It will help you navigate that all quite effortlessly. And speaking of AI, many of you have heard of ChatGPT and the scary and exciting world that presents. But has anyone heard of CatGPT? Well, it's out. It's out today. So if you're worried that you couldn't keep up with ChatGPT, CatGPT is here. And if you're worried about the machine overlords taking over our lives, we probably should be more worried about cats, to be honest. But I'd reinforce that need for adaptability. It's just so important. So what I'm going to walk you through today is the 5 elements that we see and that we use through the work that we do to help you prepare for that change, so that the unpredictable nature of leading a contact centre doesn't need to mean that you're unprepared. So the first one is around alignment, and it all starts here. So how well are your people, processes, systems and technology aligned around the organisation's vision and purpose? And the good news here is that senior leaders have said that 81% of them are saying they strongly agree, which is fantastic. And it's no surprise. Contact centres have always been a very purpose-driven part of the organisation. But the results then take a bit of a turn from here. The next part of the pie is about delivery. So critically, leaders, senior leaders, need to be able to spend the time to focus on the strategy and get away from the firefighting, the day-to-day running of the contact centre. And the results here say that only 31% of senior leaders say that they're spending enough time doing that. And so there is something distracting them from that important work. The next part is to be able to prioritise. So when things change quickly on you, you need a really effective way to prioritise doing the right work. And we need to acknowledge that there are always more hours in the day, more work than there are hours in the day. Be nice if that was the case. So prioritisation is really, really key. The next one is around capability. So with all of this complexity and all of this change that we're trying to navigate, how effectively can we embed that change? And again, the results are lower than we would like to see, with only 40% of leaders agreeing that we can deliver and embed change effectively. And one of the main reasons we see for that is a lack of collaboration. So the silos that build up around organisations, the competing priorities, the different agendas, the different measurements that different teams have, creates a lot of barriers to teams to be able to collaborate effectively. And 1 in 2 leaders are saying they're facing this challenge, which is far too high. The next one is around rhythms. We've talked a lot today, or there's a couple of people who have spoken about transparency and who should be able to see what. And this is a really important one. A really important part of managing complexity is to increase the awareness that everybody has about what is going on. More heads are better than one. And so giving people the awareness and transparency about what's going on is key to being able to get good feedback about how to improve the system at large. And we see here that only 4 out of 10 leaders are spending time each day intentionally to sit down and discuss the really important metrics and get feedback on how to improve. And then the next part is around the objectives. And this one's really important because when things go wrong, you don't want people to be sitting and waiting to be told what to do next. If they're really well aligned to the objectives of your contact centre, then they're much more likely to be able to make decisions on their own and adapt and respond to customers' needs. And then the last part of the pie is review. And again, this is about increasing the awareness across your contact centre and intentionally stopping, reviewing and reflecting on what is working and what's not. And here we see only 40% of leaders agreeing that they're able to do this, carving out that time to be able to do it. And so this is key, being able to understand what's happening within the system at large to be able to then make plans on how to improve it is really important so you can respond rather than needing to react. This isn't technically part of the 5 parts of the pie of adaptability, but I do want to talk about failure demand because this has come up a lot already today. People are asking why call volume keeps going up with all of this technology that we're now using to try and remove calls, and the main reason is failure demand. So quick show of hands, who's heard of this concept before? A few. Not as many as I would like, so I've got a bit of work to do. But failure demand is any time we fail to do something or fail to do something right for a customer. So the best call into a contact centre is one that is never made. Of course, we know calls are going to come in, and of course we want to make them as simple and effortless as possible. But we ought to be prioritising time to find out why they need to call in the first place. And that's what failure demand is all about. Last year, 35% was the number that contact centre leaders said. 35% of all interactions coming into the contact centre were caused by some sort of failure. This year, it's gone down ever so slightly to 31%, but I don't think that's a material enough change. And in fact, I think this number is actually underreported. In the work that we do, we see it around 45 to 50%, and in some contact centres, way higher than that. So what I challenge you all to do is tomorrow when you go back to your contact centre, start thinking about the myriad of challenges that you're facing, whether it's unplanned absence, whether it's attrition, whether it's struggling to forecast accurately. All of the problems that you face in the contact centre, many of them can be attributed to failure demand. Just imagine what you could do if you could reduce that 31% even by half. Imagine if you could take 15% of the calls out of your contact centre. What would that do to the capacity? What would it do to the feeling of your staff to be able to manage the complexity of those calls? Reduce those really tough calls where customers are calling in and complaining. The distraction this creates for team leaders who are having to take escalations and put out fires of all the various customer issues that occur. So I really encourage you to educate yourself on what failure demand is and start to tell the story to your executives about what the root cause of calls coming in is, not simply just the outcome of calls. And so these are the 12 keys to modern ways of working with those 5 parts of the pie that I talked about. And then the toppings over the top are the ways that you can start to influence and build adaptability within your contact centre. Quick case study from a team at UniSuper who did just that. Some amazing results here. They were already starting off a pretty high base, but they got some great results around engagement, values alignment, leadership, and involvement, being involved more in the day-to-day running of the contact centre, and it's showed some fantastic results in employee engagement. So to summarise, there are three things that we'd like you to take away. So one is that the complexity of change is not going away, and so it's so important to build adaptive practices and mindsets into the way that you think about your customer experiences, your employee experiences, and the way you build your operating models. And then lastly, identify and eliminate failure demand. If you take one thing away from this today, it would be that. So thank you.
Thank you, Sean. Is ChatGPT just like a bit of a spoof, or what is it?
I think it is. It's a pretty clever marketing ploy from the Humane Society, so I think they're trying to get some donations.
Very good. We'll all check it out. Nellie asks, when managing change, how important is it to include those on the front line early? Could this lead to too many cooks in the kitchen?
It definitely can. I think it's about getting representation, because the people on the front line, and I don't just mean people taking calls, but people who are team leaders and various other roles in the contact centre, they have a very good understanding of their needs and the needs of customers. And so find people that can represent the contact centre's voice in the important forums with your programs of work, your technology teams. But yeah, you just certainly don't want too many.
Anonymous asks, if we're trying to stop calls coming into the contact centre, what happens to the staff?
You'll never get rid of failure demand. So if you're in an organisation that's growing, which most organisations are, or even if they're not, you will always have failure demand. So if you get rid of all of it, your organisation probably won't exist anymore. So I don't think we're in any danger of that, but what we should task ourselves with is trying to make the lives of our customers easier, and by doing that, we'll make the lives of the people in the contact centre easier as well.
So it's a bit hard across the whole industry, but how should we work out what an appropriate level of failure there should be?
Oh, look, I don't think there is a level across the industry. I mean, we saw the number there, which is just an average, but I think it's more important to understand what's driving it within your contact centre. What is your number? And then identify your opportunities to try and reduce it and set yourself a target to try and improve on there constantly.
So a question that's come through on that is, of up to 50% of failure demand, how much is driven by the contact centre and driven by up or downstream impacts?
That's a really good question. So in the work we do, very little of it is created by the contact centre. So of course there's human error which might create a customer to call back, but the majority of it is driven by things outside of the contact centre. So new products, new services, technology, instability, all those kind of things that sit within that system of work, they're the main drivers.
So you mentioned, Sean, 43% of contact centres aren't providing visibility of those most important metrics or objectives. Why isn't this being done, and how easily can it be achieved for those who aren't doing it but should?
I think it can be easily achieved. I think as long as your people understand the information that they're seeing, which is a pretty easy task, it's not rocket science, then I think you can make it available to them. But I think there's a hesitancy to do it for two reasons. One, do the people in the contact centre have the time to actually look at it? And in a lot of contact centres, that's a challenge. Again, failure demand can help you solve for some of that. And I think with leaders as well, some of us think we need to have all the answers. And so, it's a different proposition to then go out and seek advice and input from others, and sometimes that can be a bit of a scary prospect.
Yeah. And final question, how do we do our best to avoid change fatigue?
Just do it right. I think people can absorb a lot of change if it's done
Simple.
well. Very simple, yeah. Just do it right. But obviously, it's not as easy as that. But it is about being very intentional, making sure that you get your people to have input at the very beginning. You're more likely to design change appropriately. But I've always thought people can absorb a lot of change. We're very, very resilient, but we just don't like it when it doesn't go well. That's where it starts to create problems.
Great. Thank you very much, Sean. Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together. Thank you. Just pop it on the chair over there. I'd like to welcome to the stage Adam from Unifor, who's going to take us through the AI chapter. Please welcome Adam. Now, Adam, as we sit down, working in AI, you must be the cool kid on the block at the moment. What's it like?
Yeah, I know. It's been mentioned about 30 times, maybe more, 300 times to this point.
What's it feel like to be in the industry at the moment? Are people suddenly, your friends, taking notice of what you're doing?
I think, the launch and rise of ChatGPT has created, what's it created? It's created awareness that my mum sort of knows what I do, and probably 90% of the people in this room will now call themselves an expert. So everyone's an expert now.
So do you feel like ChatGPT, for example, is creating, I'm sure it's creating more understanding. Is it creating more understanding in a positive or a negative way for AI?
I think definitely a positive. I think definitely a positive, because I think people can experiment themselves in use cases that they can recognise and understand, and it allows them to then think about what are the opportunities for their customers and for them as a team and for their enterprise.
Yep. Well, getting into some of the results from the survey, we've seen a big increase from 34 to 44% over the last 12 months in contact centres that are using AI in some way. Mm-hmm. How are you seeing on the front line its usage being adopted, and how has it changed in particular over the last year?
Yeah, I think definitely seen it as the stats are telling us. It'll be very, very interesting to see what next year's data shows us. I think you're also seeing a rise of use of AI for different use cases. I think if you were to rewind 12 months ago, when you talk about conversational AI, people think about a voice bot or a chat bot. They think, oh, that's the chat bot that sits on the website. I can see a couple of people nodding their head. Like that was that was their immediate, recall of how the technology can be used. And now you're seeing, people realise that it can be used for team members during a call, during a chat session. Can be used, at the end of an interaction to understand what's been happening. So,
How does Australia sit against the rest of the world in terms of our adoption and approach to AI?
yeah, so I brought up this slide. So for those in the room that want to take a photo of that, so that's a report commissioned by the federal government, by Forrester, which looks at the use of AI across Australian businesses. So it looks at the use of AI in all different components of their businesses. It puts a good light in terms of Australia's sort of a mid-running country in the use of AI. I think it also highlights that the use of it in contact centres is quite strong. I think there's probably also highlights there's some room for improvement or some opportunities for businesses to leverage their capabilities further.
Yep. So for those that are using it, what are they using it for, and how is this changing as the technology improves?
Yeah, I think the data shows that the biggest increase in the last 12 months has been in around the use of speech and text analytics. So the ability to mine your conversations, whether they're a voice or a chat session, to understand caller behaviours, agent behaviours in the contact centre. That's been the biggest growth area.
So 82% of leaders believe AI can provide a better overall experience, and 85% believe it helps humans.
Yep.
Can you give us a real live example of how AI is assisting frontline agents at the moment?
Yeah. So first of all, I think I brought this out in one of the other sessions. So AI is I think, correct me if I'm wrong, the only section which is getting numbers in the 80s for responses, which is quite, so it shows that there's a very polarising or strong opinion in this area. So in terms of use of AI as it relates to that 85%, I was lucky enough 2 or 3 weeks ago to come down here in Melbourne. I'm based in Sydney, but spent some time buddying up with some agents that are using AI capabilities during an interaction. So, not the normal chatbot, voice bot, but during a phone call where AI is, surfacing knowledge, which is alerting them of how to address certain customer needs, as well as at the end of the call, doing all of the summary notes and disposition at the end of the conversation. And I think probably the most satisfying piece for me personally was that, they didn't know, the team that I buddied with didn't know where I was from and which organisation. And at the end I just sort of said, does this help you? Does this make your life easier? And the response was, yeah, this makes my life easier. I don't have to do these notes all the time, not the most fun thing in the world. So I think that's a great use case for how does it help people?
Up until then, they just thought they were getting a new team leader. Over half of organisations aren't using AI to increase conversion. Is this kind of going to be the next wave of what we start to see AI being used for?
Yeah, I think probably the key thing is a lot of organisations use the post-conversation analytics to understand which are the best agents at being able to handle sort of challenges through a conversation as it relates to sales. I think you're going to see a lot more of that guided and augmented experience where you'll get the best behaviours and prompt it through a chat session or through a phone call. It's probably the biggest growth area, and then also understanding based on this, the type of customer, why they have made contact with you, what's their sentiment, are they happy, are they neutral, are they upset, what are the best offers to put forward to a customer. The data basically shows that for those that have implemented AI for uplift in revenue, they're achieving their results.
Yep. So. Okay. Some good feedback here that suggests that AI assists contact centres in better allocating their resources. Can you give us an example of how that happens?
Yeah, I think there's sort of two ways to interpret this data. So the first component is that, the use of the capabilities to takeaway, and other presenters prior to me jumping up here have spoken about the use of AI for voice bot, chatbot, for self-service transactions, which obviously allows you to use valuable resources where it really truly matters. And then there's also a lot of capabilities as it relates to using AI for workforce management, rostering and forecasting.
So a really strong finding on the screen now around how useful AI is, with the majority of contact centres saying that it either meets or exceeds expectations. We wouldn't have got this type of result to this question 2 or 3 years ago. Is it simply just because the product's maturing?
Yeah, I think probably twofold. Obviously, capabilities and technology are maturing enormously. I think also people now, there's a much better understanding of the use cases and capabilities of where it's the right use case to use the technology, which is driving, to your point, I don't think even if you were to rewind 3 or 4 or 5 years ago and asked about, your deployment of CRM or your deployment of workforce roster, any of these other capabilities would have, warranted those sort of results.
Yeah. As one of the leading AI software providers to the industry, it must get you pretty excited that the industry plans to invest a lot more over the coming years.
Yeah. I have a work colleague in here, and he's not going to take this back to my boss. That's
Expectations will go through the roof. Why is this really the proof? Is there now that we know that there is a big future for AI in the industry, and so we have to invest in it?
Yeah, I think to your first question, James, around ChatGPT, I think there's an awareness that people will probably when it comes to prioritising. People can't do every project. People can't spend on every type of technology in every area. But I think what this data is showing is that people are willing to, learn more and understand what it means to them. And most likely prioritise this capability as a spend area.
Well, take us through your key findings, Adam, and then we'll get into some audience questions.
Sure. So, as I mentioned before, there's a true recognition that AI is not here to replace the human beings as part of the whole service experience, and there's a recognition that that use case in terms of being able to act as your agent co-pilot during an interaction, similar to using Amazon Alexa to cook a meal. You're using Alexa as a co-pilot. That type of technology in an enterprise interaction is here today, and I think is probably the strongest growth area. And to that point, those people that have deployed AI, it's actually met their expectations that they set when they started the project, which is extremely positive. And that 82% stated it provides a better call center experience. And I think there's probably 2 ways of looking at that data. One is the end, caller or person who's chatting on the end of the chat session. Also the employee experience to the experience that I had, it provides definitely an employee experience uplift.
Yeah. Now, a lot of questions. We always get really juicy questions for AI. Is there data to show customers trust AI? And if they know that a business is using AI, how does this influence the customer's perception of the brand or the business?
That's a good question. Honestly, in terms of, can you reframe that?
Is there data to show customers trust AI? And if they know that a business is using AI, would this influence how they feel about the brand or the business?
Yeah, I think there's probably a recognition, my personal view. I think I understand and recognise that all enterprises now use AI to a certain extent, and I think most people now understand probably through the use of AI through marketing or retargeting, and people realise, I was chatting to James about new cars, and funnily enough, now I've got an ad for a new Ford.
Yep.
So
feels like it's listening.
Yeah.
A big portion of contact centre leaders' time is used up in admin. What AI tools are used to solve this problem?
In terms of producing reporting, I think there's probably a couple of different use cases that come as it relates to admin. Like, I think one component is the ability to use AI to automatically allocate the right training. I think there's going to be a following presentation as it relates to use of AI as it relates to training, which is obviously a growing area. And I think that's probably one of the big growth areas as well.
Good question here. How do you manage privacy legislation regarding AI?
Yeah, I think...
That was a bit of an evil laugh, Adam.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, it is a bit of an evil. I think probably the legislation's probably trying to catch up with the use of the technology.
Yep.
I think there's probably going to... I think probably the use of AI for marketing has led the way, which has helped out a lot.
Yep. Thank you, Adam. That was wonderful. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for Adam from Unifor.
Thank you.
Final section before afternoon tea. I'd like to welcome Justin Tippett to the stage from the Australian Customer Experience Professionals Association. This final chapter that we're looking at before the break, we look solely just at the role of the contact centre manager or the senior leader. That microphone should be good. Welcome, Justin.
Thanks, James. I remember when I first started way back when, right? The number one show on television was Cheers. The number one song was Unchained Melody. Jurassic Park was the number one selling book when I first started in call centres. That was 1990, so for those doing maths, it was a long time ago, right? And started on the phones like, as we learnt in last year's report, 74% of contact centre managers started their career on the phone. And I remember when I started coming through the ranks, you started an organisation and all you know is your job. I'm a call centre agent, I take calls, right? You don't realise that this stuff exists. There's this whole industry, there's a whole bunch of other people that also do call centre manager roles as well, right? So congratulations to Smart. I don't think they get enough credit for doing these sorts of things. It's bloody awesome to see so many people actively involved here in the contact centre industry. Just as a show of hands, how many people here would consider themselves or identify as a contact centre or call centre manager? Just a show of hands in the room. All right, so I'm going about over half, I reckon. Well done. In the 2021 census, 1,087 people in Victoria identified as a contact centre manager. So there's a few of you guys here today. The reason I tell you that, I think the first stat, I've got the boring section. It's hard to follow AI, right? Because we all want to know about AI. But one of the things that really struck out for me here was that 74% of the people that were surveyed said that they did feel valued by their organisation. And you might and look at that and go, whatever, it's pretty boring. But for someone who started so long ago and seeing so many familiar faces here in the room, I remember going to functions like this, and the number one issue for people that worked in the call centre industry was that we just didn't feel valued. The call centre was seen as a cost centre. It was just a room out the back where the mushrooms grew, and no one actually cared what we did, right? So I think it's just fantastic how far we've come as an industry when you see these sorts of numbers. So well done to all of you. But we're still struggling, right, as a call centre. What this data shows us here is how many people felt that their call centre was being considered when decisions were being made about the business. And if you look at the not quite enough and hardly ever and add those two together, because I'm great at maths, it's 46%. So 46, nearly half of the people that we surveyed said they really don't think the call centre is being considered when decisions are being made in the business. And you can probably all relate to that, right? We've had calls come in when people go, I'm just ringing about the new special offer you've got. And the call centre agent's going, sorry, what special offer? Or they've decided to increase a new product line and they forgot to tell the call centre and these new calls coming in. So it's bloody tough, right, when we don't get that recognition sometimes and people don't consider the call centre. And that's something that we've got to work out how we do better. And we'll reveal a bit of that soon. Again, about half the people surveyed said, we just don't have enough resources to hit the KPIs that we're expected to get. So if you're sitting there going, geez, it's hard getting my greater service levels or whatever metric there is, you're not alone. Half of your peers or colleagues are also having the same challenges at the moment. We know resource is tough. We've already heard a little bit about that, and we'll hear a little bit more about that after the break today. But we know that resources have been really hard to keep. And so organisations have started to adapt and said, we'll give you some tools, if you like, to help you do that. And you can see there some of the leading ones is allowing for increased shrinkage. Now, for those who put your hands up in the room, you already know what shrinkage is. For those who don't, it's when we take staff off the phones, when they're doing other stuff. We might be doing some training, development, etc. And we know that's really important to agents. They want more development and more engagement in the workplace. But when we take them off to do that stuff, that means there's less people on the phones to actually take the calls, which puts more pressure on the people that are already there doing the work. So it's a double-edged sword, and we're starting to see that. We want more flexibility, we want more development, but these are some of the challenges that are permeating through for the call centre manager. When we looked at the KPIs, we actually asked all the contact centre managers, what are your top KPIs? And you'll see some of that data in the report when you go into the detail. But I guess at a high level, some things haven't changed. Quite literally, service levels was a target when I started 30 odd years ago. It's still a target. But some things that we have started to see that are shifting is some metrics around employee satisfaction, because we know there's a correlation between happy and engaged staff, better retention, more productivity, etc. So we're starting to see those metrics come through. We're also starting to learn more about CX. Had a great presentation earlier with Belinda on CX, and you can see that CX is now starting to be considered as part of the call centre experience as well, because we play a big role in that customer experience. So if you didn't think it was tough enough already being a call centre manager and managing staff and trying to hang on to them and find new ones and balance all these new KPIs, guess what? You've got to do more. So if you ever thought, oh my God, just managing calls is tough, well, now we've got to do emails. 91% of people surveyed who were call centre managers said, yep, also responsible for the email channel. Now, we've been doing emails for a while, but now we've got live chat. 55% of call centre managers are running live chat. You can see the data up there. 26% now running chatbots. It's all happening in the contact centre. And I think it's bloody awesome. I know it's hard. It's hard trying to balance all these things, but what an amazing opportunity for all of us to go, we own the customer. It's all happening in the contact centre. We're not just a cost centre. We are managing all the interactions with our customers. So the other thing we asked our call centre managers was, we know you're busy. I don't think any call centre manager got home at the end of the day and, geez, that was a boring day, not much happened. Said no call centre manager ever. But when we asked them what they're actually doing, this is what they're doing. And you can see there, the majority of the time is really just spent attending meetings. Going from one meeting, now that one's going off. I'm not doing it. Most of the time is just spending meetings, trying to get that engagement out of the contact centre and get them around the business so we do know what's going on. So people do consider the call centre. It's a crucial role that we play. But one of the stats that really stuck out to me is the bottom one. 2% of call centre managers in a regular week spent time directly interacting with customers. Now that could be jumping on the phones, it could be serving a customer over the counter, etc. But it's a pretty small percentage. And I think what you find in some of the best practice operations is that the call centre manager still gets involved with the customer. And it might only be for half an hour a week, but it's just that chance to touch base, see how difficult it is, get real feedback from real customers in real time. So we're starting to see that that's becoming a bit of a hot spot. When we looked at job satisfaction, again, 45% of call centre managers said, yeah, it's a very fulfilling role. That's good. I'm pretty happy with that. 43% said it's quite fulfilling. And you can see they're pretty low on the other numbers. So I think as an industry, again, I think that's something that we should celebrate. Most call centre managers do find their role very fulfilling. So if you're a call centre manager and you had your hand up, you're going, yep. And if you aspire to be a call centre manager, it's a good thing to aspire to, right? Because most of them are pretty happy. I think it'd be nice if we could really shift people over to the very fulfilling, but, baby steps, right? So the key findings that came out of this section, and I know I'm on point, right? Because I'm the one that stands between you and having a drink, right? And doing some networking and stretching your legs. So I'm trying to be quick. So the key outcomes are, one, the contact centre scope is increasing. We've seen that emails, live chat, all that sort of stuff is starting to happen. And again, I think that's an exciting opportunity for us all. The resource issues just aren't going away. We see in the news just about every night another business has gone under, everyone's hurting, it's painful, etc. And I don't think that's going to stop anytime soon. And that's absolutely going to have an impact in multiple ways in the call centre. One, it could have directed our budgets ourselves. Everyone's looking to slash costs in the business call centre. Oh yeah, we'll just wipe a few heads out, right? How hard could that be? But it might be, let's move to cheaper channels. So again, that comes on to us to work out how we're actually going to do that. So resourcing is definitely a challenge here to stay. We know technology is going to play a bigger role. You know, if we just heard about AI already, it's coming. There's no doubt it's coming whether we like it or not. So we've got to get prepared for it. Employee engagement is probably one of the other things that I just wanted to touch on briefly. You know, I think as an industry, we've always had a pretty bad rap. You know, who wants to work in a call centre? You know, just like chicken hen, right? We're slaves, etc. But the reality is, I think we're bloody good at it. You know, we're not the leaders of employee engagement. You know, we do gamification. We've had reward and recognition programs since the dawn of time. And I think it's about time as an industry that we started getting a bit of credit for actually the good that we do in managing our employees. My last dot point is really, again, I think it's just an exciting opportunity that we do own the customer now. We've got that real opportunity within our business to be the heart and soul of everything that happens with the customer. And I think that's a great opportunity for us all. And the final dot point, which I didn't put in there, is that you're not alone. And I think, again, when you come to these sorts of industry functions, you go, you know what, there's a whole bunch of other people that do this role, and we all learn different things. We all have different challenges in different industries, etc. But I think that's the joy of being part of this industry, is giving us a chance to actually all improve together. Thank you.
Thank you, Justin. Some great questions. Luke's asked, what role does EQ play in the success of contact centre managers, and how can they effectively navigate high-stress situations while maintaining composure and empathy?
Jesus, Luke, come on. It's a good question. I mean, like, I think, you know, one of the things that call centre managers have always been pretty good at is the people stuff, right? So yeah, it's really important, because at the end of the day, we manage people. But I think what we're starting to see is the challenge now that we're also managing technology. And if I said how many call centre managers here can put up their hand that have got an IT degree, I'm guessing there's not going to be many hands going up. So EQ, absolutely important, but so are a bunch of other skills as well.
Should the contact centre manager actually be on the C-suite?
Good question. I'm going to controversially say no, but I think probably the head of CX should be. I think the contact centre plays a very, very important role, but I think CX covers everything. So if there was a seat on the table, I'd be going CX as opposed to contact centre.
What do you think are the main reasons why, I'm going to change to the contact centre, aren't engaged in product and service launches?
Why aren't they? Good question. Look, I think some of the leading organisations actually have, as part of the induction period, where everyone who starts an organisation has to spend some time in the contact centre. And I think there's a bit of ignorance sometimes in the world that how hard can that job be? And I think that's why we miss out sometimes. So you see a lot of leading organisations, not only do they get sort of workers to go through the front, it's the whole C-suite spend time in the contact centre. And I think when you do that, there's more of an appreciation for just what the contact centre does.
And final question, I'm going to change it a little bit as well. How will technology change the role of the contact centre manager moving forward?
Significantly, I think, is the short answer. When you think of all those channels that we're now going to be responsible for managing, they don't just all stand in isolation either. You know, we've heard the omni-channel talked about a lot, that seamless transition from one channel to another. All that stuff's great, it's magic. But, you know, I do a lot of work with contact centres, and they're still trying to work out the best options for option 1 or option 2 in their IVR, let alone integrating AI or chatbots. So I think technology is going to play a role, and a significant role, but we've still got to, I think some people are at baby steps and some are a bit further down the path. So.
Great. Ladies and gentlemen, please thank Justin from AXPA.
Thanks, guys.
So in the second half of the presentation, as I mentioned early on, we're going to start to look at some different groups. First up, we're going to hear about the feedback from agents in terms of what they're feeling, what they're wanting, what they're reporting to us. And we're also going to be hearing from team leaders as well. But before we do that, I'm just going to kick off by spending about 5 minutes talking about some of the employee engagement results to this part of the survey. One of the most important things when we speak to contact centres is around, look, absenteeism feels like it's getting worse. Attrition, it's getting worse. So it's kind of like, is the sky really falling in? Or as Tim Buzzer said, is it a great opportunity? Because we see a range of scores across a lot of different questions, and we see a range of metrics, and perhaps a lot of the time our mind goes to the worst case scenario, or we focus on where things aren't going really well. But at the moment, with regards to employee engagement, there really is a wonderful opportunity, and there are plenty of contact centres who are doing it well. One of the most important things is frequency of measurement of employee engagement. Many contact centres will do an annual or sometimes a biannual survey. The agent will complete the survey, the results will go to HR, HR will have a look at it, and then they'll put it in their drawer. And that's a real shame because it does two things. First of all, the data becomes out of date extremely quickly. And secondly, when that agent is asked 6 to 12 months later to take another employee engagement score, they kind of don't really care much about it. They haven't been asked to buy into the process. So regular engagement surveying of your agents is really important, but sharing the results is absolutely key, particularly if you've got bad results. Be visible with them. Say, hey, this was our employee engagement score. Let's put it up on the whiteboard. We're not happy with this score. And we want to talk to you and provide visible feedback around what we're going to do to improve our employee engagement score. That alone will show your agents you are making an effort just through visibility. The average on our previous report out of 100 for the employee engagement score was 75.6. What do you think the number's gone to in this report? Put your hand up if you think employee engagement has gone up in the last 12 months. Put your hand up if you think it's gone down. So more think it's gone down in this room, which is very different to when we're in Brisbane. They're more optimistic, perhaps. It has gone down, so you're more correct than them. It's gone down by 1.6 points, which is not a lot, but it is a softening. This is one of the most bizarre findings, and it happens every year. Regardless of whether the scores go up or down, the majority of contact centres actually feel that the score's gone up. So I think sometimes there's a bit of bias in our thinking that, hey, we have been trying though, things are getting better. So 84% think it's the same or better, whereas the reality is it has gone down a little bit. So we need to make sure that we're really honest with ourselves. Otherwise, we're perhaps thinking that we've got more engaged employees than we really have. The best and the worst scores. So the top 20% of contact centres had an employee engagement score of 85 or above, and the top 10% had 87 or above. So if you're in the room and those numbers are sounding about where you're sitting, then you're doing extremely well. You're doing extremely well. I'm seeing a few frowns. The bottom quartile, if you're 70 or under, that's where you're in a lot of trouble. That's where you're in a lot of trouble. And if your score is at that level, you're probably also experiencing things like very high absenteeism and very high attrition. We like in the report to be able to highlight contact centres that are doing extremely well. So we had about 22 contact centres that were in the top 10% because we had 220 contact centres participate. We asked all 22 would they like to be named, and these 5 said yes. The rest weren't allowed to or didn't want to. But what you can see from this list, and shout out, I think we've got Alinta in the room. Put your hand up if you're in the room and you're on the screen right now. We've got a couple of people. Find them and have a chat to them. What's interesting from this list, though, is we do have contact centres of all shapes and sizes. So despite larger contact centres averaging poorer absenteeism and poor attrition, there are still some very good examples of large contact centres with strong employee engagement. This is a little bit of a worry though. When we've asked contact centre managers at the top and then frontline agents at the bottom, how likely are you to recommend your organisation as a place of employment for family and friends? The frontline agent averages dropped from 7.5 to 6.8, which is concerning for a couple of reasons. It means they're not enjoying their work as much. But from a practical sense too, a lot of contact centres rely on frontline agents to refer staff. So that can be a real challenge, and if that's a challenge for you, I know someone from Smart Recruitment who'd be happy to chat to you at the end of today. We asked team leaders, we asked senior leaders on the left here, rank these in importance to improving your employee engagement score from where it is today. They said leadership's number 1, system and processes are number 2, career development, flexibility, and R&R. In the next section, Nadine's going to get up and she's actually going to show what what agents rank as important for employee engagement. So keep this in your mind because, and you might even want to take a photo of it, what agents say is actually very different from what the senior leaders say. I just want to quickly mention Gen Z. So we have a lot of different demographics in our contact centre and we can't go through all of them, but the main demographic that is going to increase in its prevalence over the next 3 to 5 years and beyond is Gen Z. Now, Gen Z looks for very different things in their jobs, in their careers. Number one for them is purpose. Purpose in the work that they do. They want to be coming into the contact centre every day feeling like there is a great purpose to their work. Number two is a healthy, flexible working environment. They want to know that they're going to be looked after. Number three is a strong sense of community. Number four is ability to make an impact. And number five is living the principles of entrepreneurship and innovation. If you are like Justin Tippett and you've been in contact centres since 1990, imagine what the list was like back then around the top 5 things agents are looking for. We need to really move with the times as our workforce moves and our workforce changes. So I'd be having a think in your EVP. Are you highlighting these things? In your recruitment, are you talking about or highlighting these things? Because this is what the largest demographic that's going to increase in its prevalence in our contact centre, this is what they are looking for. And if they're not going to find it with you, then they're going to be very happy to leave and go to somewhere where they think they can get it. So the key findings in terms of employee engagement from the report is that frequent measurement is absolutely key. We speak to contact centres that do small pulse surveys. It doesn't have to be 25 questions that takes the agent half an hour to complete. It can be simple on-the-spot checks, which can really allow you to get ahead of the curve if there's something going on within your organisation. We need to embrace the changing demographics within our contact centre and understand the motivations of different groups. And there are plenty of examples. And you might be sitting here going, our contact centre, it is just so hard to lift that employee engagement. It feels to me like our agents want so much and no sooner have we given them something than they ask for something more. But there are plenty of organisations that are doing it well and hopefully our report can help you get an insight into how to do that. So we present this chapter, I guess, as a little bit of a preview before we now move on to the role of the agent. So I'd like to welcome Nadine Power from Data Games. In this chapter, we are presenting the results, I think, from just over 600 agents that we surveyed. So please welcome Nadine.
Thanks so much, James. Yes, my name's Nadine Power. I head up the product of Data Games. A little bit about Data Games. It is a software company, performance management. We do gamification, insights and coaching. So thanks for having me. I am about to talk about your lovely agents, those ones that are at the front line and you're customer facing and represent your brand. With so many contact centre managers in the room, we probably represent tens of thousands of agents, and it's really important that we understand what's important to them. So the first one is talking about flexibility. So what is the importance to them and how much would they like flexibility? Flexibility has always been around, right? Working mums coming back to work, right? They've always wanted flexibility. I'm one of them. I want to drop off my children, pick them up, make sure I'm at the Christmas concert and the Easter bonnet parade and whatever else may demand. So flexibility has always been there. But the lens of working from home, I think, is increase that flexibility and enhance it even more. So if we have a look here, full flexibility at 35% and very high flexibility at 21%. So we're looking at in total over 55% have responded that they currently have full flexibility. And again, when I talk about flexibility, I'm not just talking about working from home. We're talking about days a week that we're working, hours a week. And I think sometimes when we talk about flexibility, because we could just come out of a pandemic, we always assume that flexibility is just working from home. It's a lot broader than that. And if you could choose, when we surveyed the agents, what percentage of time would they choose to work from home? A bit of a mismatch here as well, if we think about how much flexibility they've got and how much they would like. So when we surveyed them in 2022, 73% wanted their hours to be working from home. So about 3.5 to 4 days a week they would like. Coming out of the pandemic and becoming the norm, we haven't seen much of a shift. We've increased by 1%. We're getting relaxed. We're getting used to it. The gentleman still wants to mow his lawn on lunchtimes on Monday. Is still there, and we've adapted to that. So interesting to see that it's still something that is important to them. But working from home comes with challenges. And we can see here that harder to get assistance, yeah? The challenges of working from your home with your children, your dog's barking, your husband's driving you crazy, yeah? He's trying to set up office next to you. And haven't revealed the top one yet. So hard to get assistance, the absence of waving your arm around, yeah? Or spinning around in your chair in the office, or putting your hands on your cheeks. All that absence is gone. There's no way to get assistance anymore. We're relying on Slack channels and other chat channels to get that attention. So obviously, not surprised to see that is one of the challenges. Talking about people in the house, I talk about one of my personal experiences of calling a contact centre. Her children must have been right next to her, and they were screaming out for Fruit Loops and Coca-Cola. And I'm really hoping they weren't putting them both together. The amount of energy in that house at 9 a.m. was very high, and I think Fruit Loops and Coca-Cola wasn't going to be of benefit to her taking more calls. But again, that was one of the challenges. But no surprise, the top challenge that agents face is a lack of social interaction, yeah? And I think you'd all agree with leaders in here, you would also struggle with that lack of interaction. It doesn't just hit the agents. So what did managers do to combat that in the last 12 months to increase employee engagement? So we can see here the top two, face-to-face activities within the office and face-to-face social activities. So it's great to see that, there's some correlation there, that we feel that one of the challenges is the lack of socialisation, and that the managers are tackling that with, pizzas or having drinks after work and the like. But let's have a look at what activities and issues meant the most to them, and did that correlate to what we were just talking about. So you can see here virtual team activities is 10. If I go back to the next, the one that I just touched on, virtual activities was number 3. So as a solution of what managers were doing to increase socialisation, they were using virtual team activities. But if we have a look at what meant the most, that ranked 10. So are we hitting the nail on the head as to what solutions we're providing and the value that the agents are actually getting out of it? The next one, additional days paid leave, health and wellbeing programs, gifts, unexpected pay rises. Put your hand up if you said that, I'll work for you. Nope. And let's go through number 5, face-to-face team social activities. Remember from the previous slide, that was 1 and 2. So face-to-face team activities within the office and face-to-face team social activities, they were the 1 and 2 ones that were offered. However, when we ask agents what means the most to them, they're ranking at 4 and 5. More rewards for performance, so we do see an increase in gamification, right? We can associate the performance directly to that behaviour, so they're not just getting willy-nilly pats on the back. It actually means something to them, and it means that they're being invested in, and we know that that's one of the key things that people want, is that to be invested in. They are one of our most valuable assets, which goes on to opportunities for professional development. Think about how much professional development we get when we're working from home, and is that becoming a barrier when we're sitting behind a screen? And the next one is shift flexibility. Been a lot of talk about this. You will see when you do get your surveys, the difference between 1 and 2 is only 1%, so really those top 2 are really important. Again, don't get stuck on that pigeonhole about shift flexibility means working from home. It's broader than that, yeah? So those 2. So what do we believe the most common reasons frontline agents leave contact centres? So if we have a look at it, shift flexibility and remote working. What's remote walking? I'm going to walk with my remote. You can see that they're sitting at 6 and 7. Yeah. So again, we're talking about what's really important, but that's not the reasons why they're leaving. If I talk about that professional development side of things and us investing in our employees, pursue a different career. Maybe if I was invested in my existing career, I would probably maybe invest a little longer in staying in it. But if I'm not getting any professional development, I may choose to go somewhere else. And dissatisfaction with work. And we understand all these things, what's important to them. They were talking about shift flexibility and personal development. So what are the career aspirations? I get really excited about this slide. 12% want to follow career as a team leader in your contact centre. 34% want to follow career specialised role within the contact centre. 23% want to stay within your organisation. And 21% are just happy to be where they are. That's 93% that are an opportunity for you to invest in. Yeah? Like they're screaming out for attention. They may not be screaming out for working from home though. Like I know we're kind of getting derailed a little, I think, with that, and we just got to keep our focus levelled with the professional development that we invest in our staff as well, yeah? And how many times, your interaction is suffering. If this conference was done online, how much would you lack from the experience that you're getting today? You've been able to network, you can make eye-to-eye contact, you're taking my information in differently than if you're staring at a screen for, how many hours does this go for? 4 hours at a screen, like, come on. There would be my children asking for Fruit Loops with Coca-Cola and all things going on. So, but we can see how much more it is when the value we get being face-to-face. So great opportunity there that people, your agents are wanting to stay. They're wanting to be invested, and we all know the price of retaining staff versus acquiring new ones. So something to think about. I'm talking really fast, aren't I? So key findings. Controversial. Working from home and shift flexibility. It is a known want. But we can see that they're not leaving for that reason. It's not the number one reason, it's the 6th and 7th reason. There are other reasons why they're leaving, yeah? But we are putting a lot of focus on this working from home. Lack of socialisation is a known challenge, but are we throwing the right solutions at the lack of socialisation? Yeah, we're saying that we're going to do activities, come in the office or remote activities, and then you see how they value those, they're still down 6 and 7. Yeah, so are we really solving it? So what I'm saying is, again, looking at the employee value proposition, it is complex, but we do need to have more of a holistic approach towards it. It is shift flexibility. I can't say that too many times in 1 minute. Shift flexibility. But obviously your leadership and how you're managing and how you're communicating and how you're investing in your staff. So that's about it.
Thank you, Nadine. This question has come through kind of a few times. Agents want more flexibility. We've seen that, and they want to be working from home 75% of the time. But at the same time, because of it, they feel, don't press that button, socially isolated. It's a bit of a conflict here. So how do we meet both the demands of the agent and the customer and the business?
Yeah, and again, I think with shift flexibility is understanding what that shift flexibility actually is. Because again, we just assume that it's working from home. So is there a particular day that, I would like flexibility every day of the week, but you know what, Thursdays is really important to me. I want to get the kids to soccer training. So how can I tailor into that need and at least achieve one of them opposed to this holistic, I just want flexibility.
Yep. Anonymous asks, whoops,
Anonymous.
There we go. Yeah, there's a lot of anonymous. Is part of the problem that senior managers have become too comfortable working from home as well?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, 100%. Because they're mowing the lawns, right? So, no, I think we all want is what's in it for me, right? So I get and I work from home and I do get benefit with logistics of managing 2 children and my personal life. But I do see the benefit in coming back into the office. And I think if we dangle that carrot and remind everyone that change management process, that, ADCAR, that desire to come in. Everyone's aware of that they need to come in, but they need to have the desire and see the benefit of coming in. And I think we need to refresh ourselves on what that benefit really is.
Yeah. And finally, how do we ensure, we've got number 2 was professional development. How do we ensure that we're delivering that to a mostly remote workforce now?
Yeah, I think everyone needs to be developed and everyone needs to be invested and have that opportunity. I don't think it should just be poor performers or high performers. I think everyone should have that opportunity. In relation to how you tackle it remotely, obviously, everything has to be bite-sized. I'm a big, very, very much about micro-learning as well and drip feeding them and see what they've got an appetite for and see what works. Because, again, if this was a 4-hour session, you wouldn't absorb the information. So just don't do it and tick the box. Make sure you're doing it and actually is worthwhile, the medium that you use, and maybe it is, this only works face-to-face.
Great. Ladies and gentlemen, please thank Nadine from Data Game.
Thank you.
Nadine. We're now going to move from agents to the role of the team leader. I'd like to introduce my colleague, Will. We've got Will to present this section because, quite honestly, he's the best recruiter of team leaders in Australia. Over to you, Will. No pressure.
Yeah, that was uncalled for, but yeah, thank you. Will, I'm one of the directors at Smart Recruitment, been recruiting for over 10 years now in the contact centre space, and have talked with hundreds, if not thousands, of team leaders across my journey. So I think I'm in a good position, and today, can I get a raise of hands of team leaders here today? Team leaders, you would have noticed that contact centre managers went first, agents went second, and team leaders went last. Not today, I'm here to stick up for you. So we asked team leaders to rank their duties by importance, and this is what they said: coaching and development, leadership, checking in, hitting KPIs, QA, reporting, analysis, dealing with personnel issues, dealing with escalations, subject matter expert, in meetings, coordination, recruitment, dealing with remote issues. And so then we asked, how much of that are you spending your time in, and what's the right amount of time? You can see the results. Where are you spending too much time? No surprise, in meetings, I think. Everyone, yeah. Dealing with personnel issues. And look, I think that comes back to a lot more people working remotely, that instant feedback you get, working in a call centre, walking over, having that conversation, and dealing with escalations. So we'll touch on that a little bit later. Where are we not spending enough time? And you can see in the top 5, ranked number 1, coaching and development. 2, QA. And 3, checking in with team members. As a team leader, we've got 3, the 3 top answers are in the top 5 most important things we think we should be doing as a team leader. What's worse than that, looking at the data from last year, is that gap's actually widened across those 3 key areas. So which duties would you like to remove from your role? You have to suck it up. you got to do something, and dealing with escalation complaint, it's not going to go away. That's why you're there. You're there to support, your frontline agents and help them out. But I'm not sticking you up for that one. You're on your own. Coordination, rostering, and dealing with remote working issues. And in a couple of slides, we'll touch on that. But I guess when it comes to coordination, and I think with a lot of these, when it comes to reporting analysis, and this is going to come up a bit as well, we need to lean into looking at technologies and how to, lighten the load for team leaders when it comes to these issues, so they can be doing the things that they want to do. So what are your greatness, weaknesses as a team leader? Subject matter expert. And I think this is a really important one, and I think this comes down to, again, something we're going to highlight in a couple of slides, which is, the lack of training and development. Dealing with remote working issues, 28%, and reporting and analysis. Again, something boring, but again, it's pretty important. And again, it's noticed in the previous slide that it's a big, important part of the role. This last year was nowhere near like this. So I think the team leader has caught up with the rigmarole of working from home. They're getting used to it. 89% feel that they can. 8% said, yeah, we're not quite there, but we're getting there. Only 3% feel they're not equipped to look after a remote workforce. So that's probably one of the biggest standouts from last year to this year, is that we've caught up. this is, I guess, by far the most, I guess, the saddest part of this, and this has actually gotten worse from last year, and is that does your contact centre have a structured, ongoing learning development program for team leaders? Call centres spend so much time, I guess, onboarding, training, development, frontline staff, management, every single other area, but it seems that team leaders get neglected, and that's what it shows. 55% don't have any structured training whatsoever. And so what effect is that having to the rest of the call centre? You know, team leaders are such a great conduit between upper management and the frontline workers and customer. They see it, they hear it, they live it day to day. Yet 55% of them do not have any formal structured training, which is going to have a trickle-on effect. So we asked them, what are you hoping to achieve in your career in the next 3 years? 62 intend to be with their current contact centre. 25 intend to be with their current organisation, but outside of their call centre role. That's massive. The other stat that's not in there is that not one team leader is looking to leave the industry at all. So I guess some key findings from the report. We must find ways to allow team leaders to spend more time coaching and developing frontline agents, and I think that's using tools like technology, like AI, to take away those menial tasks so they can do the things that they think are important, which obviously is, coaching and developing their frontline agents. They were screaming out frontline agents in the previous slides, saying this is what we need. We need training, we need development. TLs identifying reporting analysis as an important part of their job, but also their greatest weakness, and it comes with subject matter expert. Again, that comes down to training. The more you know, the more you grow. And team leaders intend on staying, provide development for them, or be left with underdeveloped staff. Thank you.
Thank you, Will. Luke asks, on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being a strong yes, should team leaders be paid on par with psychologists?
Yes. Yeah. No, it's true. No, I see it and I hear it a lot. It's one of the, and they're not equipped to have these conversations. But I think working from home again has made that tougher to have that face-to-face conversation, to pull somebody off the phone, pull them aside. You can notice that when you're in the same room as them. If they're working from home, you can't see that. So, yeah, I feel for them.
Is there any correlation between the contact centres with structured team leader training and those that don't? And positive results?
I haven't seen the data, so I don't want to speculate because I know you don't like it. But yeah, look, it's probably a pretty strong yes.
If you were going to speculate, you get one free pass.
Yeah. I speculate, yeah, of course. It can only help. And again, and I think the last, I think across all levels, training development between the three key roles has been at the forefront.
So 25% of team leaders said subject matter expert is one of their greatest weaknesses. And so the questions come in, is it necessary to be a subject matter expert to be a team leader?
I think so, yeah. You're the go-to person for the frontline agent when they're in hell or they're screaming out because the customer's screaming out. You're there to support that person. You need to know what you're talking about, what the product is, what the issue is.
Anonymous says, my team leaders are here with me, don't suggest a pay rise.
That's coming up later. That's coming up later on. So get your cameras out and.
All right. And final question, Will. When you're recruiting team leaders now, what are you seeing in terms of trends around what contact centres are asking for, and what skills do you think are going to be important over the next 3 to 5 years? Maybe what skills don't, that are less valued at the moment that are going to become more important moving forward for team leaders?
I think a trend I've seen, I guess, over my trip at Smart is we're getting less team leader roles, which is a great thing, which means contact centres are promoting from within and saying, yep, you can grow a career with us. You don't have to be a frontline agent for 10 years, 5 years. They're investing in the development of their staff. But again, it seems to be a little bit with the training performance and not having that structured performance that, yep, it's Johnny who's a high performer and he wants more from the company, so let's just give him a team leader position and that's it. There's no sort of follow-up with that. I guess the key skills they're looking for, I guess the new team leaders and trainers would be around, I guess, that empathy, strong people who understand, who can support their team, can have those conversations, those tricky conversations.
Ladies and gentlemen, please thank Will from Smart. All right. righty, and keep clapping because here comes Julianne from Call Design. Welcome, Julianne. We're looking at workforce planning, which we added to the survey for the first time last year. And we added it out of necessity, really, because, I mean, particularly from a recruitment point of view, we've had so much increased, I guess, demand for those with any skills in workforce planning and management. How have you seen things change over the last 12 months, more generally?
I think the role of workforce planning has, over the last few years, become increasingly important. Are there any workforce planners in the room? I know there are a few because I've seen a few of you. Yeah, so it's an exceptionally important role, and I think the recognition for that role is increasing and people are understanding the importance. When I started 25 years ago as a workforce planner, it was somebody kind of sitting in the back who maybe looked at a few numbers, put out a few schedules, but it wasn't really thought of as a skill as such, and that has definitely changed over the years.
So what we've got on the screen now, and a question to it, is how has the role of workforce planning changed over the last 12 months as we've got these different groups of workers? We've got work from home, we've got hybrid, we've got in contact centre. How does that change things for the workforce planning team?
So hybrid is very, very popular. Can I ask the room, who here works 2, 3 or more days from home? Stand up, go on, stand up just so we can see how many it is. It's really easy to see.
So if you work 2, 3, 4 or 5 days a week from home.
Fantastic. Yeah, so you can see looking around the room, that's the most popular. So the majority of people are working at least in a hybrid model, if not completely from home. And that isn't just since COVID. I think prior to COVID, we were already moving in that direction, and COVID accelerated it. So a number of our customers were already 100% contact centre agents working from home.
Yep. It seems like workforce planning is a good place to be in 2023. Why has it, I guess, increased in its relevance and importance to contact centres?
Workforce planning is the best role in a contact centre. So it is, salary has gone up, recognition has gone up. You get to talk to every role because you need to understand what's going to impact the contacts that are coming in. It's become increasingly complex, but it's a career path for anyone, regardless of what area you're in, and it's being recognised by the fact that salaries are increasing and increasing rapidly.
Yep. You said it's becoming more complex though. Why do you say that?
There's a lot to do as a workforce planner. Your day's never done. So you've got short-term, mid-term, long-term forecasts, you've got budgeting, you've got to talk to different departments like marketing to understand what's happening. You need to understand call routing. You need to understand what agents want. Look at different options for flexibility, talk to HR about the types of roles you need to recruit. It's a pretty broad role.
We've just heard from Will around the importance and perhaps lack of training for team leaders. What's training like for workforce planners?
It's no better, unfortunately, maybe marginally. But workforce planning, as I've just said over and over again, it's a highly skilled role, and you need training for that. It's not something that you can just move from being an agent into, I'm going to create some forecasts for you and work out what schedules people want to work. It is really complex, and I think there needs to be a lot more investment in the people to ensure they have the skills and teach them what it is that they need to be doing. And you can see from the numbers here, it might be hard if you're back down the back to read the numbers, but there's a lot of internal training still happening, and I think you need to look externally for workforce planning. So talk to your vendors, understand whatever systems it is that you're using. You need to get the training from your vendor in how to use that and use it properly.
So workforce planning is naturally supported by a tool, which Call Design provide. How regularly do you need to be trained? How often are you providing tool updates?
There's usually, if you have a tool, then normally an update will come out every year. Not everybody, it depends on whether you're in the cloud or on-premise. Those who are in the cloud are very lucky because they all get upgraded automatically and pretty quickly, so they're always on the latest and greatest. But if you're on-premise, you probably don't get upgraded quite so often. But if you think about any training that you do, and like I said, workforce planning is complex, if you have training, how much of that do you remember immediately? And if you're being trained internally, it's a percentage of the training that that person got that they're going to remember. And likewise, it's really useful in a skilled role to get consistent and regular training to keep your skills up.
Yep. Has the type of work we forecast and plan for changed a lot?
Very much so. Yeah, and it's changing rapidly. So voice, back again 25 years ago, it was really only voice and it was single-skilled. Then we went multi-skilled. Then now we've got multi-channel, omni-channel. You've got every channel that you want, and who knows what other channel's coming. So there's channels galore, and they all use different maths in the background in order to work out how many staff you need. So some, we've gone already from chat, that's kind of disappearing, into async messaging. Everything's changing, and it's changing really, really, really quickly.
Okay. And are people generally happy with their workforce planning tool?
As a whole, they're okay with it, and I think a lot of that comes down to, again, training, understanding the role that you're doing, understanding whatever tool it is that you have, and how to get the most from it. And I think the more training you have, the more contact you have with your vendor, the better it is for you.
A question that's just caught my eye as you're chatting there, is there a recommendation for the number of workforce planning staff per agent FTE?
It really depends on the complexity of your contact centre. But you need at least one dedicated person. So having a team leader doing workforce planning on the side of everything else that they're meant to be doing, unless you've got 3 agents, is really hard.
Yeah. So what are the biggest challenges facing workforce planners at the moment?
Attrition and recruitment, as you can imagine, are key, and that's actually moved from adherence. So for years and years, adherence was one of the top challenges. It's now the inability to recruit, attrition, and as you've heard from everybody else speaking today, flexibility. Everybody wants flexibility, and they want more and more of it. And like Nadine said, flexibility is not just work from home. It's actually giving people the option to move their schedules, move their breaks, apply for coaching or training or whatever it is, and giving them more flexibility around what they do.
Yeah. All right, Julianne, take us through your key findings from our research.
Attrition and the inability to recruit are the 2 biggest challenges, and that has overtaken adherence. And I think that's really interesting. Attrition's always been a problem in the contact centre, but offering flexibility is key, and people really want that. So again, working from home, if you're not offering it, James has said before, it's one of the key things that people are looking for. And as you saw when you looked around the room, it's at least 2 to 3 days working from home at the moment. That's still the most popular. Schedule flexibility is absolutely essential. So if you are just rotating schedules, that is not flexibility. You need to be looking at ways to offer more flexibility to your staff. They should be using mobile apps to see their schedules. They should be able to apply for leave. They should be able to move their breaks, move schedules forward or backwards. That's kind of where we're going. What is the lifestyle that people want to work? It's blending the 2 things. You want a lifestyle, and you also need to earn money, and you also need to be more productive. So contact centres are very highly measured, and that, we can still see all the stats. Offering flexibility only improves that. And we need more investment. With people working from home, you need the technology in order to engage staff, see what people are doing, motivate staff. Gamification, as Nadine said earlier on, is key with that. But then other technologies to allow staff to see their schedules and offer that flexibility as well.
Karishma asks, do you think real-time management is a team leader task?
No. I think real-time management is changing. And again, it's a really difficult question because it depends on the size of your team and how many other roles that you're doing. But I think it's important for team leaders to be across it. But is that their only role? Probably not. You've got so many other things that you need to be doing as team leaders. Real-time isn't really something that most people have time for. But on that, real-time is changing, and adherence is changing, and the technology is changing. So with AI, there are tools that can update schedules. If I'm late to work, It can see that I haven't logged in and update my schedule automatically. If I'm stuck in a call, it can move my break to be a little bit later, without someone having to actually do that. So there's a lot of tools out there that automate some of this. And as we progress with technology, it's important to look at those.
Well, a good follow-up question to what you've just said then, which has come through, is how can you plan for shift flexibility when you are carrying vacancies?
Everybody's got vacancies. I don't know very many contact centres that are overstaffed. If you are, brilliant. But there's not many. But I think if you think about when the forecast was done and when your plan was created, so your schedules were maybe created a month in advance, some even further in advance, to a forecast that was created quite far out. How do you know that is, it's a volatile world. How do you know that what you created a month ago is what is right for today? So why can't you offer some flexibility to move things? Things change. The volumes change from whatever contact it is, and that's key. And so being able to move things around is absolutely essential, because I don't really know that what I forecast 3 months ago is spot on. And I wish I was a psychic, but I'm not.
How do you keep workforce planning staff engaged with repetitive day-to-day tasks?
Workforce planning? How could anybody be bored with workforce planning? There's so much to do.
That's the type of passion you need, don't you?
Yeah.
How do you balance flexibility while still meeting customer experience levels?
Well, I think the customer experience, so if your agents are happy, then, as everyone has said as well, happy agents, happy customers. And so at the end of the day, balancing it is about trying to offer something that is more flexible for them. So, and like we said previously, I don't know that the schedule I created a month ago is perfect. So today things are changing. I know what's happening now. Why can't I change? I can see there's a lull. Why can't I go off and have some coaching for 20 minutes on a topic that I'm struggling with? There's no reason why not, because we've got the insights to know what's actually happening. You're not going to take people away when you're getting slammed. The flexibility is only going to be offered at times where it still works for you.
So a couple of people have just asked, how do you offer flexibility when you're bound by a 9 to 5 open time?
Well, there's other things that you can be doing. So is it only taking contacts of whatever type? Is there admin? Is there tasks of other sorts that you could be doing? Can you take off phone? Can you be coaching? Can you be doing some training? Look at all of the things that your staff do throughout the day, and flexibility can be mixing things up as well. And so if they're only working 9 to 5 and everybody's full-time and that's the shift that they work, there's still the ability to move your breaks, move lunches, give you the ability to go with your mates to go for lunch. Quite often in contact centres we say, nah, you got to go at this time. And historically schedules were created, set there, and it was set and forget, and you've got to do this. We can't work like that anymore. No one's going to stick around for too long if we do.
And final question, is AI being used in the workforce planning space, and do you see this reducing the need for workforce managers in the future?
AI is absolutely being used in this space, and I think it's going to be used more and more. I think there's so much opportunity to make life easier for everybody by doing that. If you think about the role again of a workforce planner and all the checks that they have to do, why can't AI do some of that and come back with an answer for me? I think it can. So where I was talking about the real-time optimisation, that's key. That's one of the things that AI is being used for. And what was the second part of the question?
And do you feel it will reduce the need for workforce managers in the future?
No. It's such an important role. And workforce planners are everywhere now, so it's not just contact centre, it's back office, it's retail, it's everywhere. There's so many opportunities, and people are looking for good workforce planners everywhere. So if you're not happy where you are, look around. There are jobs absolutely everywhere. I'm constantly getting a tap on the shoulder to say, do you know anybody who could help us out here? There are so many roles available, and it's, like I said, the pay is going up, you are in demand. If you're an agent, if you're a team leader, and you want a really good career, go for workforce planning.
On that note, ladies and gentlemen, please thank Julianne from Call Design. Thank you. Alrighty, up next I'd like to introduce Brad Shaw from LivePro, who's going to take us through the results of a new chapter into the report, which is knowledge management. Thank you, Brad.
Thank you, James. Well, thank you. I'm glad you like my pink jacket, my watermelon jacket. It used to be my favourite until my wife told me it makes me look like an old man. I was really happy because before that I thought it was the grey hair and the craggy face. So apparently it's the jacket. But if you have a look at that photo there, it sort of does reinforce she was right. Although that was 5 or 10 years ago. Anyway, Brad Shaw from LivePro. We are a customer experience knowledge management system. This is the first time that knowledge management has been included in the survey. And I'm ashamed of myself. Nobody, when they're setting up a contact centre, thinks, you know what, we've got a telephony system that everybody uses in the office, you can use that. No, you've got to have a proper telephony system. Nobody, when you're setting up a contact centre, says, just hold the phone to your head. We all do that during the call. No, you get your own purpose-built offices. But for some reason, people actually think that it's okay to say, you know what, we've got a knowledge management system that the rest of the company uses, you should use that. The trouble with knowledge management is it's sort of like the word love. It means different things to different people. So if you're a lawyer, you've got time to sit down and review the cases and come up with your arguments. If you're in IT, you've actually got the ability to give somebody a ticket and tell them that you'll call them back. You guys, everybody in the contact centre knows that a knowledge management system actually has to give you the answer at the speed of now. Not the, put up your hand if you're in a contact centre where you can actually think, yeah, my customers would be happy if I just told them to take a ticket and get back to them. You can't. So why is it that management thinks that you guys can have the same knowledge management system as everybody else? So what we have to do is fix that, and these stats will show that. So the contact centre managers were asked, do you have a knowledge management system? 24% said no. 76% said yes, which is really great. 76% said, yes, we have a knowledge management system. I actually don't know what that 24% is doing. If you're working from home and you don't have a buddy to talk to, then I'm not sure how people are actually going to answer what their answer the difficult questions. So then they asked how important it was. 92% said it was really, really important to running my contact centre. Then the questions started to broaden. And we've got a range of answers, but they were grouped into two easily definable groups. And so then we said, what knowledge management system are you currently using? And we grouped the answers into those that were using purpose-built customer experience knowledge management systems. LivePro is not the only one. There's a couple of competitors in the room, but purpose-built. Or are you using just a non-purpose-built knowledge management system? And you're going to see some really distinct differences in the responses. But just so that I describe the difference, what a purpose-built customer experience knowledge management system has fast search. It's predictive, and you've got the did you mean, all the things you would expect. It delivers answers, not information. Everybody in this room knows that that customers want answers, they don't want information. So a knowledge management system that takes you to a PDF that's got 32 pages is not really suitable to giving a customer an answer. It's suitable to putting them on hold and having to read through it and interpreting it. A purpose-built knowledge management system for contact centres and CX is customer-centric. you guys know exactly what questions are going to be asked and what information needs to be there for you to be able to answer the question. So the systems must be designed around you. You need to be able to have a say in how the answers look, what's the related knowledge. And so purpose-built systems give you a say. And Microsoft learned a long time ago that you can't just give somebody a Word document. You've got to have PowerPoint, you've got to have Excel, you've got to have different ways to deliver different answers and different information. Purpose-built knowledge management systems understand that too. So if you want a short, sharp answer, you've got a short, sharp answer. If you want process guidance, you've got process guidance. If you want other things like a triage, even those urgent things. I mean, emails are not a way to keep people up to date with changes. You've got to actually have something in the system that is better than emails. You cannot have digital transformation and ChatGPT or AI or a coordinated self-serve model if you don't have a governance framework that makes sure that you guys are in charge, that there's specific people in charge of what's published, what everybody can see, whether it's up to date, whether the SME has reviewed it, whether legal has reviewed it, and you've got to have those systems for it to be suitable for you to use. Otherwise, you're guessing whether it's right or not anyway. And it's easy to manage. You don't need to wait for 3 months for IT or somebody to be able to put it onto their list of things to fix. And it gives you relevant dashboards and reporting. So the alternate to that is, as I said, storage of knowledge articles and PDFs. Rarely have governance. They're not built with customer experience in mind, and this experience with search is pretty poor. What I'd like to do is get those people who think they use a purpose-built knowledge management system to stand up for me. It's very late in the afternoon. We're up to slide 136. 4 hours this is going to go for, and it's nearly finished, so I just want the people who think they're using a purpose-built knowledge management system to stand up. Please, go for it. Congratulations. Fantastic. I didn't say sit down, but you can. Simon, Brad said, so you can sit down. That's fantastic news. So you can now go to sleep, because the rest of this presentation is all about how everybody else can go to management and tell them this is the difference between the rubbish you're making us use, expecting us to give great customer satisfaction, expecting us to be able to reduce our AHT, expecting us to minimise induction. You know, there's companies that actually get people to sit in an induction room for 6 weeks to memorise things and then expect them to answer the questions when they get back on the phones, instead of actually just putting it in a knowledge management system. So let's have a look. So rate your satisfaction for current knowledge management system. The light blue is the non-purpose built. You know, those knowledge management systems that the company said, you know, we've got one, just use that. The dark blue is obviously the ones that the people that stood up, congratulations, all Live Pro customers. No, they weren't, by the way. That's the satisfaction level. Then we said, you know what, let's just check that. Did you work with have you changed organisations, and for those people who worked in a company that didn't have a purpose-built knowledge management system, that then went to a company that did, how do you rate the two experiences? The light blue, 2.3 out of 5. The dark blue, 4.5 out of 5 in terms of satisfaction. The other way around. So if you used a purpose-built knowledge management system, 4 out of 5 satisfaction, and then had to move to an organisation that didn't have a purpose-built system, a 3. The stats will show that you can't deliver the service that you'd love to deliver. How would you love to just be able to concentrate on engaging with the customer, rather than worrying about trying to find where the answer is or putting them on hold to ask the team leader who wants to be a subject matter expert, but the team leader doesn't need to be a subject matter expert if the answers are right in the system. So here's the satisfaction levels. 95% of purpose-built knowledge management systems, and it's not, I just remind you, it's not just LivePro, it's the purpose-built ones. 95% satisfaction, all very satisfied. 60% for the others. How easy is it to administer? No, this is not a surprise. So a system that wasn't built for you is not going to be easy to administer by you. So 90% of those people who have a purpose-built knowledge management system said that it's easy to administer. The scores are a lot less in the non-purpose-built ones. And the final one that I want to just talk about is the most frustrating thing about any sort of system, and that is if it's not working or I need to know how to use it better or I've got a question, what sort of support can I get? Those systems that your organisation has said, you know what, we've got a knowledge management system, use that, use SharePoint. Everybody else uses that, use it. Well, try and get any sort of support for that. 18% versus 90%. So for those people who didn't get to stand up and have the blood rushing to your brains at slide number 141, congratulations, you can use those stats and go back to your boss and say, you know what, I'm not the only one that's struggling to be able to reduce the AHT. One easy way of making staff engagement improve is to actually give them the tools that's actually going to help. Having somebody work from home and not have the answers at their fingertips, I think has got to be almost abuse. We had a client in the UK. It is. We had a client in the UK that was an outsourcing company. They had a bank as a customer. They had about 240 people on the phones, and then COVID happened. Their knowledge management system was a binder about that big, but the bank said, you can't take that home. 240 people trying to answer questions and they haven't even got anything to help them. That is a recipe for really bad customer service or somebody else's new employee, because I wouldn't like to do it either. James is actually putting his bet on, is it number 3 in race 4 that you're on to now, James? And I'm expecting a great question here from Luke. I've got one more slide. See, my presentation was that boring, even I got bored with it. So the purpose-built CX knowledge management system delivers higher satisfaction for customers, for agents, and guess what? Your boss is going to be pretty happy too if you can reduce AHT. And it actually answers and allows you to answer questions in conversational speed rather than putting people on hold. Luke, what was your question?
Question from Luke. Are you worried that AI will supersede the need for knowledge management systems, given they can provide not just fast answers, but intuitively fast answers before, during, and post-call?
Isn't that a great question? Luke, thank you, and I'll give you the $50 later. There's no way that AI is going to be able to work unless somebody tells them the answer. Do you really think that ChatGPT can be let loose to provide answers on your company's processes, procedures, and products when you actually haven't told them the answer? It can't. And if it does, it's not going to be right. So for any AI or for any chatbot, it needs to get the answer from somewhere. And so you really need to have a system with a framework to make sure it's right. Good customer experience knowledge management systems deliver the answer to the customer, through whatever channel they want to ask it. You only have one set of products, procedures and policies. Just maintain them once and have a system that actually allows you to push them to the website, to the chatbot, to the AI and to the agent. Great question, Luke.
Only time for one more, Brad. What percentage of interactions are the same question that agents can seamlessly answer versus the percentage actually needing a knowledge management system?
You know, a great man once said to me, James, don't speculate. I've no idea, mate.
Okay,
I can't tell you.
Fair enough. You're nothing if not honest. Ladies and gentlemen, thank the man in the pink jacket, Brad from LivePro. Thank you. I'd like to introduce our second last speaker for the day and a new topic that will be in the report for the first time this year, which is training, learning and development. So this was a survey done by those people working in training, learning or development in our contact centres. But please welcome from Excel Technologies, Bruce Craig. Thank you, Bruce.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Well, we're nearly there, as James said. There is going to be drinks and beers in a few minutes. And as Shakespeare, I think it was Shakespeare, said, it is a foolish man that stands between the wildebeest and the drinking hole at dusk. So run over James, who will come after me one more time. Where do we go? So Excel Technologies, you've never heard of us, I'm sure. We're in the AI space, and we do real-time digital coaching. So I'll digress a little bit into AI, seeing that's so topical today. And a lot of what you'll hear about and you see about is generative AI. There's many forms of AI. Generative AI, of course, is boil the oceans on a massive data set and just see what happens. Kind of interesting and kind of dangerous. And if you want to know how dangerous it is, look up the Twitter account of Sam Altman. He's the CEO of OpenAI, and see what he thinks of his own product. And he's basically saying it's dangerous, it's great, it's not ready for prime time. But, and that's, and it is a creative tool, not a business tool. We do causal AI, and causal AI is about the mathematics of causality. What if you do something, there is a mathematical determinant that says that's the result you will get. Now, how does that apply to call centres? So imagine, if you will, in all your businesses, in all your floors, there are top performers. What if you could take the 20,000 of their transcripts, data mine those using AI and machine learning to understand the words that work, understand the strategies they use, what do they say to the customer, when do they say that, when do they insert the seeds for a cross-sell, how do they handle objections? Those top performers, if you ask them why they're so good, probably really don't have an idea. They'll say, I'm great with people, I love the product, but they intuitively have learnt and discovered what is good. What you can do with AI is data mine that, understand those strategies, put it into a conversation map. So the idea is you have all the determinants, all the streams that conversation can go down. And then you use chess endgame theory, which is about always pulling the conversation back to the end goal that you're looking for. And then, having done all the mathematics around that, you present that in a widget on their screen in real time, so that they now know what the top performer would have said in the moment in response to whatever the customer is asking. No matter where the conversation goes, the script is dynamically changing to adapt to the conversation and pulling everything back in. That is causal AI. It is very, very clever, and you'll see some fantastic results. And imagine what you're presenting is you're enabling every one of your customers to virtually talk to your top performer in every conversation that you have with them. How good would your engagement be with your agents? How good would your customer experience be if they're talking to your best agent all the time? And even if someone comes straight off the street, they're presented with a paragraph. Read the paragraph until you're comfortable. For more experienced agents, there'll be a word or a phrase that's in bold. So that's the word or phrase that mathematically will drive the conversation where you want it to go. Use your own phrases, use your own words, just weave that phrase or word into the conversation and you're ready to go. Because we're not about replacing humans at all. This is a cobot, a co-pilot if you like, and we're literally just the angel whispering, sitting on the shoulder, whispering to your agents and saying, do this, think about that, here's a word that will help you. Anyway, causal AI. There's the pitch on that. So what we see when we talk about training and bringing your agents up, enabling them to be your best, is you'll see the black curve is where we always sit. You have attrition, you're trying to replace them, there's a learning curve to their speed to proficiency, and finally they get somewhere around the call centre mean. Imagine if you could actually bring them on much quicker by putting them out onto the floor and showing them, they can see themselves what those top performer behaviours are all about. And of course, they can overachieve that. We've got a client here in Australia that insisted on doing a pilot control, and we have agents after 3 months outperforming tenured agents that have been in their business for a year or two. Kind of neat. Anyway, the big thing about the survey and the training is that it's all about dilemma. And we all know that. There's too much to do and not enough time. So the first thing is always going to be about where you train. We all know that training in the office, on site, is the best place to train. It builds rapport, it builds empathy, and you can get the training done very efficiently. So 82% of you know that that's where the best place to train is. And as we saw earlier today, trouble is 74% of your agents don't want to be in the office. So we're immediately confronted with a big dilemma. And what actually results? You'll see there the top one, 100% on site, so 44%. So 82% of training is best performed on site. 74% of your agents don't want to be there in that training. And so we hit a middle ground of 44% on site training and so on. So it is a dilemma of how you deliver quality. The focus of it all, what are we actually training them in? So again, a new agent comes on board, the foundational work around how to work the systems, where's the coffee machine, how are the people, that is where most of the training is focused. And you'll see there that communication and sales, as an example, is very small. And the trouble with that is they are the soft skills. They are the skills that build empathy and relationships with your customers. So we know that the existing area of weakness is exactly those areas. So what we're saying in another way is to say that, and if you can read that up the back, those bars in the middle there, 3, 4 and 5 weeks. So that's the average amount of training that you're all putting your teams through. And so you'll see there that 3 to 5 weeks training is where we're doing foundational work, not soft skill work. And what that means is that after that time, nearly a third of your agents are experiencing training fatigue, having just learned the foundational work. And 11% are resigning through that process. Again, if you're able to show them some AI tools that says, look, have confidence when you go out on the floor, there are tools that will guide and help you. Have confidence that you will be successful. And I think one of the key things is we talk a lot about how flexibility is key, and it absolutely is. But another thing that drives people's stickiness with an organisation is competency. If people know that they're successful, they know they're good at their job, they're going to be happier and they will stay. There's a lovely phrase called conscious incompetence. And we all suffer that from time to time. I do anyway. And the reality is, gosh, I'm new, I don't know this yet. I hope the boss doesn't find out that I'm not where I want to be just yet. If we look at AI and coaching, what we'll see here that amongst the surveyed groups, that one on the right, which is nearly 50%, AI is extremely effective in training and educating people. But it is very, very rare at the moment. But I think you'll see, someone asked earlier, what are the new changes that are occurring? I think you'll see a lot of uptake in this area. And then for existing agents, you'll see here that team leaders are delivering, only 10%, the majority, over 53%, are delivering only 10% of the training. And yet at the same time, what are the skills that your team leaders would need? And it is in that training space. I think earlier one of the presentations showed what's the key skill that you'd want in a team leader, and it is training and coaching. And yet it's one of the skills that they least use. And again, we're all time poor. So what does that mean? There is a significant gap, but there's some great technology out there that can help you close that gap in performance and bring your team on. The soft skills is where top performers excel. They know what to say, when to empathise, how to move conversations on. And that's very difficult to train to. And the last one is targeted coaching in the moment is going to be key in the future for all of us. Now, I hope that's given us plenty of time for questions.
It certainly has. Thanks, Bruce. Question from Brian. Yes, a round of applause. Well done. Brian asks, how do you balance the benefits of AI-based coaching, the benefits of AI-based coaching in large groups of working from home, where many agents are increasingly concerned about isolation? I don't think I read that well, but do you get the point?
Yeah, if it's about training at home, I mean, the whole idea of it doesn't matter.
Because training at home versus the isolation, though, and agents identifying that they're isolated at home.
Yeah, I mean, the isolation is a different question, and I'm the same. I'm a big believer in the office for team and for, you know, we're social beasts. We love being part of a team, so there needs to be the right balance in doing that. In terms of AI delivery, it doesn't matter where you are in terms of having that angel on the shoulder.
Yep. Brett asks, do you see AI effectively enabling an inverted classroom model? Now, I don't know what an inverted classroom model is. Do you?
No.
Next question.
Brett, where are you? Stand up.
Brett, come and find Bruce afterwards.
I'll shout you a beer.
Jordan's asked, what do you believe is the right duration for training for multiple products and knowledge?
Okay. A new hire wants to be on the floor as fast as possible. That's the fun part. If they're, that's where they'll make some money and have some fun. So you saw there that, 3 to 5 weeks, you're getting fatigue. I think, get the people out on the floor as fast as possible and they'll have fun. And in terms of training on products, I mean, one of our clients is a very big call centre in India. Because of the new iPhone launch, they had to get these agents on the floor immediately. And so they were only trained in one product. They sell 5 products. Their performance in the other 4 products was nearly as good as tenured agents, because when the AI model sees the intent is to buy a certain product, that conversation map comes up and guided them through the product knowledge, what they needed. If there needed to be, here's a pitch for you, Brad, pay attention. If there needed to be knowledge management, it would say, click here, go to that part of the knowledge management system too. So you can take someone who hasn't even been trained in a product and they're going to be pretty successful.
Final question. This is from Dideca. She asked it earlier today. It's got the most likes and it didn't get asked, but it's very relevant to this section. Thoughts on new staff members having longer learning curve when working from home, or I guess being trained from home, versus being in the contact centre where they can overhear more experienced agents on calls?
Yeah. Look, again, the office. I mean, you are going to hear things around the water cooler, the tea room. You're going to learn things. You're going to see people. And it's very difficult at home. If you're in the office, James, you're the boss, I'm the new hire, I can go up and ask you, why did you say that? Why is that important? When you're at home, you've got to make a meeting, you've got to try and interrupt something. You just feel that you're imposing when you're trying to ask those questions, so it's always going to be diminished. Again, that's probably, sales pitch here, why having the angel on your shoulder helps you move through that.
Yeah. Fantastic. Ladies and gentlemen, please thank Bruce from Excel. Grab that. Alrighty. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to take you through the last sections now. We're just going to talk about salaries and then recruitment. But salaries is great because it's going to be relevant for all of you, unless any of you are working for free, which I've not met anybody who's done that yet. So frontline agents, customer service, the most common role across all of our contact centres. We're going to show 2 averages here. So first of all, a national average. So we've seen a 3.4% increase to $57,700 in the base salary for customer service agents. But I just want to put a little bit of an asterisk next to that, because over a third of agents are getting a bonus of around $4,000 on average. And so how we then equate to that is we take 37% of $4,000 and we put it onto the $57,000 and we get about 59 plus super. So 59 plus super is your real national average for customer service, and this is probably going to be the last time we see an average salary that's not starting with a 6. So if you are needing to plant seeds, if you need to have discussions with your management about changing salaries, this report's going to be great for you, and it's one of the reasons why we produce it. And the biggest challenge with contact centres in terms of moving agents' salaries is we're not talking about changing one agent's salary by $5,000. If you've got 200 agents, you're looking at $1 million straight away, plus super. Senior roles. So we asked agents, do you identify as a customer service agent or are you a senior customer service agent? They've had a smaller increase, but they're up to almost 63,000 before you apply the bonus again. When we look at that on a national scale, Victoria was right bang pretty much on the average. As you'll see there, if you want to open up a call centre in WA, you've got rocks in your head. Victoria is the place to be. And thank you to Adam and the other people who have come down from Sydney to Australia's largest city to join us today. We hope you don't get lost moving around the place. It is a big and scary place. All right, but sales is where it's at. We have had big increases in inbound sales, outbound sales, and lead generation. These skills are getting harder to find. So at Smart Recruitment, while our primary area of recruitment is contact centre, sales outside of contact centre is number 2. And we have so many clients that might be looking for a BDM or a sales rep, and they would absolutely love somebody who's worked in a sales role in a contact centre. Contact centres are starting to realise that, but also realise the value of the people who sell the product, who sell the service, who bring in the customers. Team leader salaries. We've seen an increase, a smaller increase, certainly when compared to agents. 3.4% for agents is pretty good. Well, not pretty good, but it is what it is. Customer service is not really. But significantly, 33% of roles are paying, I do have a laser on here. Yeah, no, it's too bright. 33% are paying above 90 grand for customer service roles. So that's kind of where you need to be competitive. If you want to be in the top third, you need to be paying at least 90 plus super, and with an average bonus of 8,500. Inbound sales, so sales roles, again, have had a higher increase. So sales team leaders have had a higher increase in their base than customer service and had a higher increase in the average bonus paid. Going to pop up all the specialist roles on the one slide. These will all be in your report. Knowledge management and training, learning and development, a new category, so we are asking these questions for the first time. From a recruiter's point of view, we are continually surprised about how low those working in training are paid across our contact centres. I do want to point out that in the report that you'll take with you today, there is an error in the forecasting salary from workforce management. It should say 101,000. It's incorrectly printed in your report, but the digital version, it will be correct. When we look at senior leader salaries, again, we saw a really strong increase, particularly in their head of roles. We've seen large increases here in their base salaries. We've seen good bonuses paid. And so our own hypothesis around why there's been such a large increase on the higher head of roles is really, firstly, the value of the senior leader in the contact centre, but particularly over the last 12 to 24 months, the extra responsibility as we've navigated through all of the COVID changes has seen a really big increase for those leading the function. So the key findings, frontline agent salaries have not increased with inflation. So we saw 3.4% there. What's inflation at the moment? 7. So it's not even half. I think this is going to become a really big issue over the next 12 months. Really big issue because contact centres are very slow because of the scale and how many agents you have to move salaries. Sales positions have seen the greatest increase and workforce management and senior leadership roles have generally had large increases too. Well done, Julianne. All right, so the most exciting chapter in the report is naturally recruitment. This is why when I talk to my clients, I try to explain to them why things have changed forever. I did this last night in my hotel room. Didn't really have anything better to do, but I went on Seek, I went to call centre jobs, I selected Melbourne, and as you'll see there, I got 900 jobs within 50 kilometres. So that's covering all the categories, but if you are looking for staff in Melbourne at the moment, you're competing with 909 jobs locally. But if we then go to the work from home category, and Seek have this as a category now, and it is their most searched term, we get another 544. So suddenly the competition for the best agents has increased significantly. It's getting more challenging. There's 50% more jobs available for them to find. But all hell breaks loose when we do just the work from home category. So you're not just competing for 900, against 900 other jobs at the moment, you're competing against 10,000. So there is a tenfold increase in the availability of vacancies for people who want to work from home. So if you are not making the most of that talent pool yourself, if you are not actively out there looking for people who want to work from home, then it's kind of a one-way street for you. You know, agents are leaving your call centre to find the work from home roles, but you're not making the most of the opportunity that people are happy to work from home. When we asked those in the talent team, how many vacancies are you looking after at any one time? On average, it was 32. I want to put it this way. If you work for 38 hours in a week, how many hours does that give you for each of your 32 vacancies? To screen through 100 resumes, to phone interview 40 people, to face-to-face 20 people, to write up the bios, to send it through to the line manager, to book into times, to do the reference checks, to do the police checks. You've got 1.2 hours per role. It's just not enough. It's not enough to do the job well. At Smart Recruitment, I don't like my team members to be working on any more than 10 roles at a time because otherwise it's just too hard. We want to give a great experience to the candidates. How can you give a great experience if you're working on that many roles? So go easy on your talent team, and if they're finding it hard, let's chat. How many agent level roles do you expect to recruit? Sorry, how many did you recruit over the last 12 months? So this is not this report, this is the last report. The last report, the talent team told us they recruited 399 roles that year. This report, 12 months on, they told us that they also recruited 399 roles. So there was no difference. So over the last 24 months, it's been 2 years of nearly 400 agents being recruited. So we all know that unemployment hit its lowest point ever a couple of months ago. It went back up to 3.7 today. That is still lower than it's been 99% of the time since it's been recorded. Interestingly though, do you estimate recruiting more or less agents in the coming 12 months? 46% say more, 39% say about the same. So 85% of contact centres still think they're going to be recruiting 399 agents over the coming 12 months. So it's not slowing down. And as the question to Ian today, why are we still getting so many calls? As we move to omni-channel, we're not seeing a reduction in calls and we're seeing more tasks and responsibilities and more channels being given to the contact centre. So we don't forecast there to be a slowdown in the demand for the best agents. Remote hiring, 46% of contact centres said they've accessed talent from other cities and other states around Australia that would have been hired locally. So that's really pleasing, and that number has jumped up each of the last two reports. 4% hired people from overseas for Australian contact centres that would normally have been hired locally. So the key findings for the recruitment chapter is there's no sign of it slowing down. Our benchmark at Smart Recruitment is 5.0%. That's kind of the sweet spot. So as a recruitment agency, if unemployment gets above 5%, that's when we start to notice there's less demand for our services. Even though we've got great services, they do come at a cost. So when it's above 5%, we feel that our contact centres, there's enough available people looking for work. When it dips below 5, that's where it starts to get tough. When it gets below 4.5, that's where it starts to get really tough for us at 4.5. And we've been sitting at 3.5 to 3.7 for most of the last 12 months. So it is we shouldn't use the term war, but that's what it's like. We are seeing candidates that will come in for interview. They will accept a job with us. They'll start that job on Monday. They won't turn up on Tuesday because they were offered another job to start Wednesday, and they didn't really get the vibe in the training on Monday. And they're happy to do that. So it is a constant selling, and you probably feel it in your teams as well. You know, we feel like we should be screening, and we need to be screening the candidates really well, but we also need to be selling to them the whole time, selling to them during the recruitment process, selling to them during the onboarding process, selling to them during training. Otherwise, they've got plenty of other options. Recruitment teams are overworked. You know, too many vacancies for those in the talent team. So when your recruiters in your organisation are telling you I'm really struggling, there's a reason why. And high volume recruitment requires high volume effort. It's not the type of role like if you're looking for maybe an IT role where you actually go out and physically search and you just need to find one good person. It's volume, it's scale, it's lots of applications. And remote hiring increases your candidate pool. If you are not hiring remotely at the moment, you need to give it a try. We have been very pleasantly surprised with some of the clients that we work with, who can't offer the average salary. So we said, why don't we try hiring remotely. Can you support remote workers? And the responses have gone through the roof. Because what do? You open up the whole of Australia. So if you can only get 100 candidates, for example, in Melbourne, if you open up that role Australia-wide, you might get 5 times as many. And it takes a lot of work to screen 500 candidates, but it gives you a really good example of how you can open things up. So ladies and gentlemen, that's the end of today. We are going to, you're going to get a hard copy of the report as you leave here today. 2 apologies. Apology number 1, when we planned this event a couple of months ago, we estimated that we might get 200 or 300 people here today. We've got 420. There's not enough show bags for everyone. So if you didn't get one, you can take it from somebody else. I don't want to stampede, but there was one sitting by the window at the back over there. We had 280 for today, so not everybody got one. There are enough reports for everyone, but if someone takes 2, someone's going to miss out. But the report will be released in digital format. That's not the correct date. It's going to be the 15th of June. When we release that report, you'll also be able to watch a recording of today. You'll be able to download the slide notes. So we'll be in touch with you for that. Next week we're in Sydney. So if you've got colleagues in Sydney who you think need to hear the pearls of wisdom that we've dropped today, please ask them to go to smart.com.au/tickets and register to join us there. I'm going to send out a feedback survey to you tomorrow. We would love to hear your feedback. It's only got 6 questions. A couple of the questions are around what else should we be surveying? What is topical? What is relevant? Our report changes each year because we want to make sure we're surveying and coming back to you with benchmarking data that's really relevant. And finally, a really big thank you to our sponsors, our partners that have stood up here on stage today. We could sell this report to you, but instead we would rather provide it to you for free, and the organisations that you see on the screen have helped fund the production of the report, the marketing, the printing, the event today. So please thank them. And finally from me, there's one single reason why we do this at Smart Recruitment, and that is because we want to be, and we believe we are, the best contact centre recruitment agency in Australia. We've got the best insights into the market, and so if you're considering, trying something different in your recruitment process, maybe it might be just some advisory. It's not just placements that we offer, it's advisory around the market too. We would love to chat from you. But from all of our speakers, from my team at Smart, thank you for your patronage today. Please enjoy our hospitality and have a good evening.